welcome to episode 167 of Floating Through Film. This week we conclude our Satyajit Ray series with, we're going back in time with two of his historical movies, The Music Room and The Chess Players. I guess my first question is, because Luke was wondering why, Luke just thought I forgot to pick The Music Room and that's why I had to add it here. But we'll see. I'm gonna ask the question now. Do you think I had a better reason than just forgetting to do The Music Room?
That's a funny reason, but I feel like they're definitely both critical of the ruling class, or it's the rich people in India. The Music Room, it's this guy who has all these positions that kind of withers away through history in a way, and the Chess Players, I feel it's kind of critical of the ruling class and how they kind of allowed the British Empire, at least that's what I think was on. The historicals have kind of confused me because I don't really know much about it, but that's kind of what I thought was happening. So I guess that's the connecting thing I saw between the two.
What about you, Blake? Did you see anything?
There's a lot of scenes of dancing and music.
Honestly, just the dancing one,
which is really nice. No, I do get some of what Luke was going for, especially in The Music Room. I think the themes are way more apparent in The Music Room than they are in The Chess Players, if you don't know the history, maybe, because I don't know the history of India that well either. And so, The Chess Players, it's just awesome watching two dudes play chess for so much of the movie, and then every once in a while he cuts to the British Empire basically taking over this country. That's almost what it feels like. I still don't know exactly like I said, I don't know the history of India, but I don't know if these two guys playing chess are apart or paired perfectly with these British, the British Empire taking over from the king or whatever. I don't know if there's something going on there, obviously, where it's just chess being played between two different sides, obviously. But yeah. I don't know. I like The Chess Players a lot. It's one of my favorite Satyajit Ray movies, even though I don't know as much about it. It just has this it has this freaking, it has this way bad, man. I don't know. It's just very peaceful and calm to just kind of watch these two dudes play chess for a lot of the movie, which is nice. The Music Room is still one of my least favorite, honestly. I'm still not sure exactly why. I think it's just because I think he's done these themes a little bit better, honestly, in some of his other movies. But the connecting tissue, though, they're both set in the 1800s, correct?
Yes.
1800s India.
Yes. So they're definitely still in the colonial India past.
Both about
kind of both entering this kind of modernization too.
Luke already brought both about the richer.
Yes.
The richer class. Although I do think he likes the king of India.
See, that's the
or whatever.
That's mainly what I was gonna ask. Is that's the main similarity I see. Is you guys said I think all of you guys said right answers, but it's central around these two figures, basically, of the king and the Music Room, the central, the kind of.
He's also a king, isn't he?
He's a landed gentry or something.
Yeah, something.
Basically, a landowner. Of feudalism.
They call his mansion a palace or whatever. So
yeah.
That's what he thinks of himself, at least.
But I don't know. Okay, so you said something interesting. You think he likes the king more.
Yeah.
Do you think he let's talk about the music for a minute. Do you think he likes that guy?
No.
Not at all?
It's hard to say. I don't think
I've already mentioned quotes how Ray doesn't like black and white characters.
Yeah, I don't think he hates this guy, but the feeling that I get watching him, Ray's done his black and or grayer characters that I like more. I just don't like this guy, honestly. So I don't know. I don't know. I don't like this guy that much. So it might just be personal. But like we've already said with Ray, I feel in this series is he lets you just kind of make your own decision on how I feel about these people. So I don't it's probably just personal on why I don't like him, but this dude just feels so selfish, all about prestige. He even whenever his son dies, I feel he doesn't even really care about his son. He just cares about his bloodline dying out or whatever. So I don't know. It's hard for me to feel bad for this dude.
I don't know, Blake. Luke, what about you?
Probably, yeah, similar thing. I think he's definitely being critical of him. Although maybe...
Oh, yeah, there's definitely... See, that's what's great about Ray. There's definitely criticism of both.
Yeah.
But he said something interesting about... he seems more sympathetic at least or something. He likes the king more in the chess players. So
Yeah.
why do you think he's so just more hateful on this guy then? Is it just more? It's a more depressing movie, maybe. Because I agree with you too, but
I honestly don't know. I think it's because the king, like even everything that everyone, all the like everything the British is saying about him is like he's a bad ruler. The people don't want him, and the king is like, if that's so true, then why my people not say that or something? Like, what you could also say is like the people would never say that to the king, but
Or maybe it's just like the presence of the British. Maybe
that's also a big part.
yes.
Well,
Like just the physical presence there.
That's actually another thing that I'm thinking about is like why I pick both these movies too is like they have the colonial past, but they also about both of them are about clashes between like kind of two almost like civilizations or way of life. Like the music room is basically feudalism, which is the owner, and actually to me the most interesting character in the movie is the neighbor.
Yeah.
He's the kind of I think I'll read in a second. He's like
man.
the self-made. That's like such a great line when he says the. Oh my god, I actually love that guy too. But he's like supposed to be the more modern, mercantile class, basically that like basically new money. It's basically a new money versus old money movie, if you want to put it that way. And then the chess players is like about the Indian. Like the Muslim kingdom versus the British, obviously, and their kind of new way of life, and kind of even like bringing that up through like the different ways they play chess too is fun. But let me first before we get into the music room specifically, I wanted to read this quote that Ray had about music in general, because he also apparently over the course of his life said he always loved music more than film, which is first what makes Ray interesting is like he learned Western music before Indian music, which is kind of interesting. And like he really knew like Western classical music really well. But then he also really learned Indian classical music later on. But this quote is great. He says, quote, "Film is the only art apart from music which exists in time. We respond to music because our nerves are made to respond to certain qualities inherent in music. Qualities of rhythm, of movement, of contrast. A good film has to have these qualities too. Without them, the best of stories would be told badly and therefore ineffectually. In a film, those qualities cannot be reduced to mathematical terms, as they can be in music. They remain indefinable and elusive, but they can be felt. And it is these qualities, and not turns and twists of plot, that make you want to see a great film again and again." Which is like, I mean, I just agree with that so much. And honestly, it's been good over the series, like, kind of.
Would Eisenstein disagree though?
No. I mean,
because didn't he like kind of like think of film more as like?
No, he thought of his music first. Like he grew up with music, especially this idea of like movement, contrast, like just like how two notes in a song hit and there's like vibration of the sound. He wanted images to clash like that, and this almost like the way those clash of an images produces an image in your head. The same way in music or something. Yeah. He literally saw it like that, like playing images like in notes almost. But you could like I don't know why do you say Eisenstein would disagree with that?
Well, I just thought like maybe like I wonder if because I know Eisenstein like studied chemistry and stuff like that, so I was curious if like
the mathematical aspect?
Yeah, it's like he had some like mathematical aspect of it. Like
actually, he might say film is also more mathematical. But he's saying in music they are more mathematical in film, but they can't be reduced to mathematical terms. He's saying there's maybe about something about the image. I don't know. Maybe a musician might disagree with that, but music has always had like just I guess more mathematical aspects to it. I don't know too much about music composition though.
I mean, there's a whole genre of music called math rock. So.
Math rock?
Which is actually really good, too. So.
Interesting. No, I definitely, honestly, Blake would know more than me about that part, but especially, like, this is just something, in general, like, if you read anything about Bergson, like, one of my favorite philosophers, his whole central, and, like, Deleuze is really big on this, too, like, his whole central philosophy is around, like, basically movement itself, like, what is movement, like, his whole idea is like life is movement, like this idea of like basically the things in between what we see or like in between objects, like
or the paradox thingy, where like you can't like space is like infinitely divisible.
Yes, but like life is basically kind of not something that's infinitely divisible. You know, I don't want to get too much into that, but like basically that idea, and like that's why obviously filmmakers were also drawn to this idea too of movement and contrast, and like Satyajit Ray also has like when I was reading, I think it's from the same essay that you wrote this. He says like it's not a coincidence that a lot of the early filmmakers loved music too, like Griffith and stuff, and Eisenstein, like I said, because that's how they saw it. Is like, how do you create emotion through images, like, and then like the rhythm of images, not just story. Like he says, like I just love that, like it's these qualities and not the twists and turns of plot that make you want to see a great film again. And like that's so like. If you just watch any movie today, and if you wonder, like, oh, that's a great story, that's a great idea or whatever, a great, what am I looking for? Like, something when you're, like, watching a movie, like, oh, that's a good idea. It's a good hook. Concept. That's fucking what I'm thinking of. That's a good concept. Like, I'll go watch that, but then you watch it and it's like, the concept isn't
terrible.
You know, it's terrible. Yeah. It's because of these qualities, right? Versus, like, a sci movie where you hear the concept and you're like, I don't want to watch that. No, but then you watch it and it has these qualities, you know, and that's why you want to watch it. Yeah. But then also has good concepts too. I'm not going to say that, but it's different.
But like, there's a lot of great directors that have movies that don't seem.
But it's like these qualities. Like, that's actually what size is important. Like that's why he's stripping all the other. There's like other directors too.
Like Bigger Than Life for Nicholas Ray was a big one. Like before watching, I was like, "This doesn't even sound that interesting." Like a suburban teacher, school teacher gets addicted to like some.
Especially when you hear like it's a guy that did a. What's his like popular one? Why am I forgetting names? Like
Rebel
Without a Cause.
Size, I believe.
Yeah. No, but Bigger Than Life is so good. No, but exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's like why we watch, I just want to have to read that quote. But to get into Music Room specifically, maybe this is one reason I think, now that I'm thinking, I've been thinking about that you said specifically about liking The King more than this guy. My one thing might be Ray is obviously just that his camera is like more sympathetic to The King a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is because The King actually does stuff. Like, he doesn't do stuff that the King, you would want the King to do, I guess, like politically or anything. But he actually does really interesting stuff. And like even in Indian history, he's known as being like a really artistic king. And like he's still made lasting impacts. So it's like, you can be sympathetic that way, you know, versus like this guy is like, is he even doing really anything? Like
he's this guy.
Like he helps his son like sing one time. Like
this guy's one purpose in life is to spend all the money he's ever had. Apparently.
Yeah. Well, but that's I actually kind of like that drive. It's like that death drive thing. It's almost like a Nicholas Ray thing, but it just seems like just I don't know. There's like the more I watch this, like I can't decide. There's a little redeeming quality where it's like. I like that he's just like willing to kind of give up everything for music, you know.
Yeah. No, I can get that part at least.
And I think that's what. Well, first, let me read this quote that how Ray saw this guy. He said, "Quote: The fact that the man doesn't know what is happening really, doesn't know the process of history, makes him a figure of pathos. He's pathetic, like a dinosaur that doesn't realize why it's being wiped out. But there's no doubt that the Zamindars were real connoisseurs of music and sponsors of music, and that musicians owed a great deal to them. Without the feudal lords, music wouldn't have flourished the way it did." For long periods, starting from the Mughals. So first of all, if you like, remember did we do Drupal on the podcast? Or we talked about it?
We talked about it. I don't know if we've done it yet.
But it's actually a very similar building to this one, like this guy's house. But like basically the guys that would sponsor these musicians, you know, was this guy. So it's like, just as like if you're a film lover watching this, you're like, oh, people actually, you know, sponsoring arts. Like that's basically how a lot of films survive now, you know. It has to be like rich people sponsoring them and stuff. But so you can kind of see him being sympathetic. To me, he's like sympathetic that way, where he's like, that's true. At least he's like, you know, trying to keep a music alive. But it's just like everything else, obviously.
But it's for his prestige, though.
Yeah. But another part about this movie is, would you say this was like a popular movie?
What do you mean?
Like
would I expect this to be
popular?
Like I know it's one of his more popular ones on Letterboxd. You mean just like at the time?
Do you mean at the time?
Yeah.
I think the Indian population would appreciate the music in it.
Yes, and that's basically what I'm asking. Because it's surprising. Like this is a slow movie. You know, it's about just like a dying feudal lord, a historical movie. But Ray made this movie right after Aparajito, because that movie basically bombed, and he said like he basically had to have a hit, or else he would have to go back to advertising. So this is the movie he chose to make for his like big hit, which is like to me is crazy because it's like I just can't imagine that in an American movie in American context. But like Blake is right, it's because of the music. It's only because of the music. You know, it's like especially even at this time when he was making this movie it must have been the early '60s.
This one came out in the late 50s.
Yeah, 58. He's basically like because like you said, it was actually true. Like this became one of his most popular movies in the West over time. But like he has this quote years later where he's like he didn't think this one was going to export. Like he was making this basically for the local audience because it was like a lot of classical Indian music.
This is a sellout movie, basically.
But yes, exactly, and not sellout totally because it's like still very slow movie, you know. But it was basically because like this is still true today. Like a lot of people go to watch movies in India because of the music. You know, even before they hear anything else about the story or anything, it's like if they know what the composer is.
Because that's the thing I like the most about this movie, and why I appreciate it, even if I don't like certain aspects as much as most of Ray's other movies, is he has a lot of music in this.
Yes.
And there's great sections of the movie.
Too, yes.
Yeah, like great sections of the movie, like
actually,
dedicated to just the musical performances, which I loved. So.
And that's why I would recommend it too, and that's why I love it for the most part, as we'll get into. So let me say, because Andrew Robbins says there's 3 reasons why Ray picked this. Because first of all, I guess this was a very well-known Bengali short story too, so it was like kind of doing like IP, you know, that version of IP when people actually read stuff. It was just kind of crazy. Like now IP is like not even comics,
be the IP now?
which now IP is not comics.
Fortnite?
It's like it's like IP is like the what people know of comics, you know, because like people don't read comics.
Well, I'm just trying to think of like what new movies, because we already have Minecraft.
It is. It's like video games.
We have
stuff,
Minecraft.
Yeah.
Like what are going to be the movies?
We're definitely getting into Fortnite.
I can't believe we mentioned Fortnite in the Satyajit Ray series.
I mean, just the IP thing. Like I was mentioning that
because a lot of Satyajit Ray's movies are based off of books.
Yeah. But this was a short story.
It's crazy.
Satyajit Ray Fortnite movie. With AI, it's possible.
With AI, it's possible.
No, but then he said he was also interested in the main character, but really the primary reason he picked it was it had music and dancing, which he said were the ingredients that Bengali producers always sought from a movie, which is... it's just funny that this is the music and dancing, you know? It's just like... I don't know if like in today if you release this like people in India would appreciate the classical like performances, you know, as they would have been like 58. But 58 is a long time ago still. It's weird. It's just like weird to think about. It's like that was a modern movie. Now it's like 75 years ago almost or whatever. That's what's all weird about our podcast, you know. It's like, especially once you get into this.
Well, isn't art a lot of art like they define modern as like the 20th century or whatever, and then it's like postmodern, and then it's like contemporary. They can get confused.
Yeah, I just hate all these words. Yeah. But no, yeah, technically you're right in terms of like the periods. Yeah, like modern is actually like around this 50s era to like the 70s ish,
and then it's like
then postmodern ish,
and then is it contemporary or is it like
I don't know.
Future like
postmodern,
post
futurist?
Yeah, something like that.
Or return. Back Nazism. I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. I mean, my Twitter feed would have me thinking that.
Oh, God, it's so bad.
It's...
Grok. Our podcast should be asking Grok questions.
Yeah. Grok context?
It's actually... This is depressing. It's just a different topic, kind of, but, like, the idea... Oh, actually, we'll relate to this maybe. Fuck it. But, like, this idea of, like, having to pay attention to something, you could just see it in so many ways. Like, it'll be like a clear video or even a clear image on something, but people are so lazy where they don't even want to interpret it that. They'll be like, Grok, what is this? Interpret this. Like, Grok, explain it in detail.
I'm going to start, like, responding to some of your tweets with that. Grok context?
Okay, yeah, but keep going to the music room. And Robinson, he also says, maybe it's another reason why Blake doesn't like it. He says this is, aside from the movie Devi, maybe, this is the only movie Ray did where the central character basically has no capacity for change.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting. It's like,
he
that's why he describes him as a dinosaur, you know, that just doesn't know what's happening. because he's very just a passive character.
No,
you know,
whenever you described him as pathetic, that is the exact word that I was looking for, because that is exactly what this man is.
Like, yeah, he definitely is. Also, this is an interesting dichotomy in the music itself, because this is like a movie before Ray started composing his own movies as well. And the composer's name is Vilayat Khan. And he had actually grown up in like a kind of more this kind of environment where the movie takes place, like with a patron and like a classical Indian music environment. And so Ray said like the composer who did this movie he had actually much more sympathy towards like this kind of a zamindar of the movie, because he was one of these guys that sponsored this kind of music, you know.
Yeah.
But Ray, he said he was more detached and he wanted the music to be more neutral. So let me just read what Ray said. He said, quote, he wrote a lovely theme for Roy, which is the main character, which I was rather worried about. I wanted a more neutral kind of approach to the music to go with the zamindar, not suggesting that I was full of sympathy for him, but kind of an ambivalent attitude. But I liked Vilayat's theme as a piece of music, and I felt the story would tell what I wanted to tell, and the music would not interfere with my general attitude to feudalism. And so basically, like, I'll try to point out a couple times in the movie too, but like we'll see some interesting dichotomies of like when he's using like just like the purely classical Indian music, and then there's some times where he even adds like Western music or like other sounds too, you know, to kind of like basically give you that little detachment that he's a little more ambivalent attitude he's talking about, you know. And it's like it almost makes me think of like Godard or something, because Godard is really extreme about this kind of things, where it's like all of a sudden to take you out of something, and you know, he would like add a very distinct sound or image or something, you know, to detach you all of a sudden. But like Ray does it very like subtly, like with the music. Like sometimes where he wants you to feel sympathy for the music or the main character, he leaves like only the Indian classical music. But other times, like when he wants you to detach, adds other stuff, other sounds. You know, it's really interesting way to use the music. Like he's kind of doing it more like a musician would. But then also like because of this experience, I think was part of the reason why he started wanting to compose all his own movies too. Was just like basically this idea of like working with other composers, kind of just like it was annoying to him. But yeah, also one more thing that actually connects these two movies that I only learned during this time is, so we see in the music room 3 performances, like the 2 singing ones and the dance one, which is my favorite at the end. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what movie that reminds me of?
The dance scene at the end?
Yes. There's a movie I'm almost positive he must have been thinking about.
Oh, The River?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Especially when he just...
The wedding scene? Or like the dream sequence?
No, it's when we see her dance.
But that's a dream sequence though, isn't it?
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it's a dream type sequence in the movie, because it's
or
like
just
a
like
wedding. So it's like a wedding type thing.
Maybe you might be right. Either I just remember she's wearing white or something, but
yeah,
it reminds me of that. But no, like that dance is called Kathak dancing, and it's a version of Indian classical dance. And apparently, the king of Indian, the chess players, he actually like basically expounded on it, basically like helped like form it, which is crazy. Or he had his own version of it, and we kind of see that in the beginning too when he's like dancing with all the girls and stuff. But yeah, yeah, I think we can go ahead. But I think we can go ahead and get started into the movie. I'll pull my nose. Starts with the honestly one of my favorite Ray opening shots.
It's a great
shot. Chandelier.
Opening and closing.
Yes. Actually, this is a more classical cinema thing. We see the chandelier multiple times. Yeah, we see it multiple times. Like, and like each time it's like a different context, which I kind of like, you know. But this one is maybe my favorite shot is this like dark black background and then like the chandelier swinging. But then we cut to I think it cuts to like a close up of his face, and we're basically like just chilling on this.
It's like a very memorable close up.
It is.
Yeah.
He's just like
staring off into space, basically.
Like this that reminds me of this guy too, because like Ray does use a lot of non-actors in a lot of his movies, but this guy you can tell is like a professionally trained actor, because it's like I don't know. He's doing more classical acting. I feel like in this one compared to maybe some of the other Ray movies we do in the future. But yeah, then we basically these opening scenes are kind of showing like how like
A
aimless
person like
he
this
is.
would live.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah, how aimless he is. Like,
Well, like
like
I love this opening because whenever you brought up Throughpod, like it made me think of like this opening makes me think of Throughpod with just this guy sitting here. I don't know what time of day it is. Like I honestly kind of wish that this movie was in color too sometimes. But it makes me think of the Throughpod like opening where he's talking about just like the music playing throughout the halls and like the building is literally constructed for the music to flow around the place so that everyone can, so that wherever you are you can hear it basically however you want to. And so like this opening scene has the person playing at like the top of the place or the top of the terrace or whatever for an initiation or some shit for some other kid.
Yes.
And that's how he hears it. And he just is like starts.
Yeah.
It's basically just starts the music, but.
And maybe like this is like what starts him like. It's like every time you hear it, like it's almost like a rivalry thing too.
That's
like
true
when he
too.
hears the music, he's like, oh, now I gotta do something
Yeah.
too.
I can't be one upped.
Even though like maybe this would look better in color to a certain degree, I do like some of the black and white just because like every time we're in the house, it's like super depressing black, and then like especially this.
Oh no, it looks beautiful.
This first shot when we get like
Very
the horse,
white.
the white.
Yeah.
Very white when he's like riding the horse. It's like this great little pan. It's almost like there's a couple of these shots where it's almost like John Ford, where we see these like people in these like windows or like doorways and like then the wide background, these empty backgrounds in the back, especially with the horse. We'll get one later too. But this one's like one of my favorite. Where you just like see the camera pan from the window and like this horse like just riding off in the distance. But then we see the. Businessman, or I guess we'll call him like the merchant, I guess, or his neighbor. He comes and we kind of. This is where we're learning. Like, he says he's like lived in multiple places. We're basically, if you're kind of thinking about the theme I talked about, where Ray's like this is a theme between feudalism and the mercantile class. It kind of gives like the movie a little more tension. It's like every time they talk because he's like already describing his life is like much different than his because. He's like, I've been to like all these different cities. I've made money. That's where I learned music, over time. And then now I'm like living back here. And if you describe that, like that's very modern way of living, of like making money and stuff compared to like this old feudalistic class where he's like basically had this land for a long. His family's had this land for a long ass time. He's basically never had to leave. It's just like a totally new way of making money, and he's like. He doesn't see it as valid because he's like, he's obviously very old and set in his ways.
He also doesn't think he doesn't think much of his music, of his view on music. I don't think either. Obviously.
Well, I think that's part of it. It's like I think that's also part of it. Maybe it's not stated, but it's like music is also part of the blood too.
Yeah.
He has that scene where he's like, it's in my blood. Like I love that scene.
Yes.
Because Ray does a good job making him look funny too. He's
He
not
does.
just like taking him seriously, but like the character himself is serious, but he makes him look more kind of like just sad. Yeah. Like pathetic in a way, but that's what makes this the more I've watched this movie, it makes me like this mercantile class. Make this neighbor guy more because the first time I watched it, like he's kind of annoying to me, but now I'm like more and more. I'm like I kind of like it.
The first time I watched it, I thought it was annoying too. This time at the end, whenever you're just calling him Grandpa, I just kept on laughing. I was just like this.
Yeah, but yeah, then we learned he basically sells his family jewels without telling his wife. For his son's initiation ceremony. So like at least this first one is for initiation ceremony.
Exactly. This one's for a semi-good reason until he says it's for prestige only. So
yeah, okay. He like we probably know that deep down,
yes,
but like
deep
at
down.
least like he had an excuse. It's like it's for his son, But this is also a great thing for like probably a lot of people with a lot of money. Is like they do for the things for their kids, but it's really for their own prestige,
For appearances.
Yes, exactly. Because your kids are part of you too. No, there's also great shot. There's a few great shots with the fireworks too.
Oh yes,
and these like
fireworks.
these like dark black backgrounds.
It's like
always
weird, though,
always
'cause
love fireworks.
It's like a firework, but it's like on like a contraption type thing.
Yeah, it's like on like a
It's like a
spinning
spinning
thing. Well, it's like
thing?
that.
Oh,
It's like that
oh,
thing in
oh.
Monster Who Loves Holiday. Isn't there something like that in
sparklers kind
that?
of thing?
Not a sparkler. I feel like there's a bigger one at the ending of that.
Well, no, he goes into the shack, the fireworks shack.
Yeah,
and
but
goes
there's
off.
a like a spinning contraption. I think
I
in
don't
that shack.
remember.
I'm pretty sure.
This also has one of my favorite, just random shots too. Is this shot right here?
Sheesh.
I love this shot. There's like, it's like a silhouette of the band playing with this like all this fireworks, and like the background is like the house and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's why I'm like I kind of disagree now with Blake about the black and white. This movie.
Oh no, I didn't I did not say
run the
that.
tape.
Run the tape.
I said for the beginning only. I want to know what time of day it is that he's listening to this music.
It was a morning, wasn't it? Oh,
Okay,
that's true.
I don't remember. I don't know.
No, but then it kind of cuts to the actual music first performance in the house. I have it written down. What the singers were? Damn, I'll have to find it in a second. Okay, yeah. So this first singer is Begum Akhtar from Lucknow. Yeah, I don't know.
Which isn't that also that's mentioned in the Chess Players too? I'm pretty sure.
The same.
The king is singing about luck now. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah.
In the Chess
No,
Players.
he does at the end where he's like about leaving it. Yeah. But then basically, there's a lot of these are just like a very mise en scène shots. You could say of like how like these men, all these men in the room like.
That giant ass mirror behind the
yeah,
singers and everything,
and like how like it's basically just like to me when I watch these performances, it's like okay, I get it. Like this is why this is why he like is willing to do all this. Is like because basically these kind of environments, like Ray's kind of sympathetic to these kind of environments dying in a way. It also reminds me of like a Money Call quote. It was him talking about Drupad, and he was talking about. Actually, he was talking to his like a ustad or his teacher, where his teacher had asked him like, or someone had asked his teacher, why are there no great Drupad players anymore? And he said, which is something I always think about in terms of just films in general, is just like his answer was, it's not only that to have a good Drupad player, you don't only need good players, but you also need a good audience to understand. Like what the player is actually playing, or else there's like no point, like especially for like these kind of like high level music, it's like you actually need a more refined ear to actually understand like the differentiations of like what's going on, but if you just lose that audience, then like of course you can't have like masters too, right? Because it's like who are they playing for? And that just makes me think of just like films in general. It's like the audience is getting dumbed down too, like. You kind of have to blame the audience as well, not just like the directors.
And I do. No.
Yeah. But it's like something I always think about. It's like how do you but then how do you do it the other way? Like how do you make an audience want like better films? Because it's hard for me to like blame the audience because like whatever they'll watch whatever comes out. I think, but I don't know. It just made me think of that because that's why I love like these like men just sitting in this room like actually like listening. I don't know, like. Yeah, it's just a good scene. But then he comes home drunk to his wife, and that's when he has to tell her about like he basically mortgaged all the property and the jewels and stuff. That's what makes this movie so sad. It's like there's basically no fight back. There's no like tension of like, oh, maybe he's gonna change or like
The funniest thing is the wife is like, oh, don't worry, at least we still have my jewels. He's like, oh no, I sold those too. Damn it, man! What are you doing?
It is. He's kind of a magician. It's like, how is he going to find money for this next performance? And he always does. No, like she's like telling him like his son is basically obsessed with the same things he is, and not like what's cool and anything. You could tell he's like really happy about it. But then like we get the scenes of like the son learning how to play. I'm pretty sure it's the same boy as in Aparijito, like the young boy. I'm pretty sure it is the one that plays the younger person. But that's when we learn like this is I guess going to be we think is going to be more sad than it is for him, but I guess it kind of affects him as the family is about to go die. Whether like she says her father is sick and so they should go visit, and he's like it's so funny when he's like, I need to stay, someone needs to take care of the land, and just her reaction, she just starts cracking up laughing. It's like come on, man, that was bad. But he ends up staying anyway.
Elephant scene.
Very India.
When they're like
Mashrabunmi.
Yeah, when they're like.
It's when the kid is watching the other guy give the elephant bathe, giving the elephant a bath.
Is that after the family leaves or before?
That's before, I'm pretty sure.
Before, yeah. I think it's the introduction of the kid. And yeah.
Because they're saying that he likes to do all... It's whenever they're talking about all the things that he likes to do, including riding, because it's whenever he's riding the elephant, I'm pretty sure.
No, but then there's a great shot of like him watching the family leave in the distance as he like at the door. And then there's also... This is another... some of the sounds are also interesting in the movie because like we hear him in his room. He's just like listening to music, and then all of a sudden he hears like an electric machine in the distance too, and like just like the idea of electricity, like an electric sounding machine, it just would have been so, contrasted to like everything else you would probably hear back then, and it kind of gives him a shock. But then he goes outside. I kind of forget how it goes to the next scene of the fireworks and stuff. I don't remember. But anyway, there's a great transition from like he goes out because he goes outside because he hears this, and then all of a sudden like it cuts to night. I forgot why though. But like basically there's like a few different moments because then like the neighbor comes and he's like they're having like he's feeding the poor, he's having a celebration for the poor and stuff, and then it cuts to like the next day where the this is where the neighbor comes to his house and he's like, I'm having an inauguration. I think he says it's for his son or something, I forget what he says, but he's like, I'm having an inauguration, and that's when you can tell the main guy is like, you can tell he's basically a dick because he's like jealous about it because he makes this up on the spot because it's so funny the way he shoots it with the servant like behind the neighbor, but like we can see the servant's reaction where he's like, oh actually you can't do that because I'm having a celebration on the same day. And like the servant's reaction is like, wait, what? Like with what money? But the guy's like, oh, but it's funny because his neighbor still is like kind of going by the old ways, he's like still showing respect to him.
Around this guy, at least, obviously.
Well, no, because he's like, I'll cancel my plans then.
Yeah.
Because of obviously you're the leader here, so and he actually does end up canceling it, and it's funny because the guy ends up after the guy leaves, he tells the servant the musician he wants, and he just ends up like laughing almost like a villain or something. It's kind of funny.
He does that a couple times in this movie.
Yeah. But then, like, it basically cuts to the second performance of the movie. And this is, like, where we're getting the intercuts with the kind of storm outside. And this is... Because first we see, like, there's a great shots of him, like, listening to the music with, like, the camera behind him while the singer's, like, in front of him. And then he's, like... This is basically the happiest we ever see him look. Like, we actually see him smile a few times while he's listening. But then every once in a while it'll cut to like the storms outside.
Because he had called for his family to come home early, just for this performance or something, I think. But
okay.
I don't remember.
I forgot what it was, but yeah. But then there's like this may be another foreshadowing shot too. It's like he looks up at the floating chandelier again too. It's like I like during the performance, but then he walks outside right after, and that's when I think it's like servant comes up and sells them like.
Is the shot of the chandelier in this one the one in the cup? Because
no, that's the next one.
Okay, that's the next one. Okay, so that's probably
the reflection.
That's probably my favorite one.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one too. But basically, he learns that his family's been killed in the storm right outside. It's like literally right after. But then it cuts to him just.
They carry the kid's dead body. And it's like it just
yeah. The wife didn't even make it, but like the son made it, but he's like dead. But then like we see him like basically depressed in his room. Tells the servant he's never going downstairs again. Basically do what you want with the house and stuff. Like
because the servant's basically saying we have to auction everything. So
yeah, he's like do whatever you want. I'm never going downstairs. He even says no more music for me. I think that's maybe what gives the movie a little more hope too. Like is like he's reached such a low point. Like the fact that he has this third performance later on in the movie at least is like kind of like, oh, that's the power of music kind of thing. You know, even for this guy. Like
this is rock bottom.
Yeah, but he's at rock bottom right now. Yeah, for sure.
He's lost his line, you know.
No, but there's this some of these like shots of like there's a good shot of when he finally decides to go downstairs again in this like empty courtyard. There's like this dog just chilling there. This like small statue in the foreground. I don't know. It's like it's a good just kind of peaceful shot. I don't know why I remember it. But that's when it's when he's going to go see his horse for the first time.
Yeah.
Like it's when he finally goes downstairs. When he's like, he's sad master. He doesn't ride you because you don't ride him enough. And I'm like, damn, this horse is kind of cool too. But then there's a good kind of dual shot, you could say, of we see there's like an elephant walking in the distance, and at the same time like a truck drives like right by it too, like creating this dust as like he just watches in the foreground, kind of giving the same kind of just an image that's giving the same kind of theme of the movie, But I think why does he say he wants the elephant to put the bells on? I forget why. Is it for the? I don't know why.
For a trip to Ganguly's house.
Okay.
That's what he tells the dresser.
Okay. Because later we'll see the neighbor say, actually it's right after this. The neighbor arrives to the house and he's like, they greeted your elephant with praise in the streets and stuff, but with my truck they just threw rocks at it. So it's like I think maybe that's why, to kind of just show off the elephant, because this neighbor, when he comes, he's like, this palace was really something once, but look at it now, huh? But even dead, an elephant's still worth a fortune, eh?
Yep.
That's so funny. Which is kind of, I think, a good way to summarize this movie too. Is like, or this guy too. Is like, even though he's technically already dead, at least in Ray's eyes, like a dinosaur is like, maybe why we still study dinosaurs even if they're dead. They're valuable and we find them interesting, especially like historical wise. But no, that's when he. It's maybe my favorite line in the movie. He's like, "I'm a self-made man, no pedigree." Nope. It's like he's like saying it straight to the camera too.
It's like, why they hate me? Because I'm a self-made man. Pedigree.
Which it's a funny line, but it's like maybe there's something what he's saying too. Where it's like, especially at this time in India, like a lot of people still abided by the caste system and stuff. Or like these kind of clear lines of hierarchy versus this guy who's like obviously trying to break through, but basically just through money. But yeah, that's when he goes and talks to the. Actually, he's already said all this stuff to the servant. He hasn't told this to the actual guy. Then he actually goes and talks to the actual guy. But yeah, that's when the neighbor tells him he's gonna have this Kathak dancer at his house, and this is I think this is when the main guy gets the idea of he's gonna steal this guy from him too.
Yes, he gets jealous.
Yeah. This is when we get some just great night shots of like the moon, some other night shots where I think this is basically, now that I'm thinking about it, it's the scene right after the guy tells him about the Kathak dancer. He's like, okay, I'm opening the music room again.
Yeah.
It's like really right after. So like there's also just this idea of like kind of like his ego has to stand up for his family, especially when it comes to music. Like, he's willing to sell all his possessions, but it's like, well, he has to at least, a rival when it comes to, like, putting on musical performances and stuff. But then he goes into the music room. I love how there's these two servants. One of them, like, is basically, like, all negative, and the other
one of
them's
the, like, realist, and the other one's
yeah.
the guy that, like, goes along with all this mania or whatever.
The
yes man.
Like,
the yes man,
yeah.
The lover of music, you might say. Maybe he's been wanting to listen to music some more,
No, but they go in and they see like the cobweb. This time we see the chandelier with the cobwebs on it. And he's like looking in the mirror too, and he's like seeing how old he looks now and stuff. And then he's like, that's when he tells the servant, get ready for the dancer. And then he's like, it's impossible, sir. And then he like changes his mind like immediately. Because I love this shot too when like we get this montage of them getting the music ready and stuff, and like the servant like rolls his carpet up, he's like all smiley and stuff.
He's very happy this entire time.
Really happy. There's like this huge Hennessy bottle he has, and then like making mixed drinks or something. And I was like, damn, this looks good as fuck.
I just like the lighting of the chandelier.
Yes, lighting the chandelier too. But then we get the third musical performance. We get this like long ass wait too of like he's basically I don't know he has to create tension or something, but he's like waiting in his own room while everyone's like waiting in the all
He's aura farming.
Yeah, basically. Like, he finally arrives so they can start the performance.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is my favorite. This is my favorite performance in the movie too.
Yeah.
This dance one too, because like the way he hangs on it for so long. It's probably like close to 5-6 minutes.
That's a long time.
And a lot of it's basically just on a performance too. We only get like reaction shots towards the end of the performance. You kind of just have to watch it, but it's like
A lot of shots of her feet. A lot of shots of like
yes.
everyone basically.
Yes. Also, we get some shots of the servants too, just watching from the outside. And then like because initially he's kind of just showing it almost like in 1 or 2 long takes of just like the camera's kind of moving with her as she dances, and at the end like it cuts faster like with the beat of like the faces watching and her feet and like the drums and stuff, so it kind of gives you both. But then we get the kind of dramatic moment of the neighbor like wants to give his tip first to the dancer, and he's like no.
Yeah.
Like reaches
Stops
out his
with the cane.
stops it, like even like the music the
music stops.
Yeah, it gets all dramatic and stuff. And he's like the main host reserves the right to give it first, and the neighbor gets all offended and stuff. It's like damn.
And then gives her the rest of his mind. No, I'm just
Yeah.
basically though.
He does give her a lot. It looked like. But then it cuts to him like alone, and he's like just laughing. He's like, he failed. Like this is all he wanted was to basically embarrass him before losing all his fucking
Generational
possessions.
hate.
Generational.
It really was. At least he's gonna die soon, you know.
Yeah.
So at least he goes out on top.
One last dance.
Yeah. Oh. Because this is where he's like, what arrogance, a dwarf reaching for the moon. And he's like, you know why you failed? The blood.
The blood.
The blood in my veins. The way he says it too is it's so funny. And then he's like basically like this servant who obviously knows who his family is. He's like, do you know who my family is? Like showing him around. He's like showing him all his family and stuff. And then he's like, to you, my noble ancestors. And then to you, my noble self. And he's like pointing to himself and stuff. It is kind of funny. It's just like I don't know. It's just like fun to watch, but it is kind of sad too.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it's like a bleak comedy, I guess. But that's when Blake was saying this shot of the chandelier as he's walking with his cup. He sees the chandelier in his the reflected in his cup.
It's going out.
Yeah, as the chandelier goes out, and that's when he has this like freak out moment where all the chandeliers start going out.
Like all the lights, basically.
Yeah, all the lights start going out too. And he's like freaking out because he's like, but that's what lamps do, mister. They go out and the sun's about to rise.
It's like, damn, I've been up all night.
Yeah. And then he's like, Tufan is calling. And it's like, that's his horse's name.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, sir, you can't. And he's like, honestly, I think it's a good way to kind of end the movie too. It's like basically this kind of death drive, almost like a Lusty Man ending or something. You know.
It also kind of reminds me of there's a Oshima movie called The Pleasures of the Flesh, which is kind of like this businessman like steals his money and then kind of like has his death drive, like spending it all and stuff. Like all the gangsters like come and look for him. Basically.
Honestly, I don't know.
I need to rewatch it, but I need to rewatch Oshima in general.
The Lusty Man also ends with the guy dying on a horse.
Damn. You think Ray? You think Ray's making a connection there?
No. But there's something to
That'd
that.
be
Just
crazy.
like he basically wants to do something like
Yeah, just death
crazy
drive,
almost.
definitely.
Yeah.
His son is calling him.
Yeah. But then we get he rides it and then like he basically falls. The horse falls.
He forgets how to ride a horse apparently.
Yeah, or stop it, I guess. Or something.
Turn it at all.
There's a great shot of like the kind of like his kind of like shawl or something that he was wearing like in the foreground as the ocean's in the background, and the last shot ends like it starts with the chandelier.
Well, it's also got like he's laying there. Whenever the servants get there, they see the blood, and then the one servant that he said that to, he's like,
yeah.
the blood.
Yeah. It just makes you recall the lineage.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm glad you mentioned that because it makes you think of blood now the same way, like the opposite of how you.
Oh, exactly.
About,
like
you know, like we
the
all
same
die
as
the
us
same.
all.
Yeah, we all die the same. You know. But yeah, that's the music room. We will come back after a short break for the chess players. and we're back to talk about the last movie of our Satyajit Ray series, which is, I mean, he didn't make. It's kind of crazy how many movies he made in the 70s. Because we did Days and Nights in the Forest, The Adversary, The Middleman. Now we're doing The Chess Players. All 4 of those came in the 70s. So like 4 of the 10 we did came in one decade, which is. But then from the 77, so he made The Chess Players in 77, The Elephant God, which was a kids movie in 79, and then after that he didn't make that many movies from 80, but he also made his last movie in 91. So like there's still like a 15-year gap from his last movie to the one we're doing, but even I still haven't seen his last movie, The Stranger.
I have.
I've been holding off. Maybe I should now.
Probably. I'm pretty sure that one's about contemporary India too. So.
Yeah. But to me, this is like honestly, it's tied for my favorite. With we'll talk about the rankings later.
Yeah.
With Charlotte.
With the few, you know, a tier system allows this kind of nuance and perspective. Not allowed for a classical ranked list. That's for another conversation off screen.
It's for a later conversation.
Well, we've already had.
That's for an earlier conversation. No, but like, okay, so The Chess Players. I don't know. What do you think? What do you guys think this movie's about?
Colonialism.
Definitely one part.
Colonialism. What about it?
Like it's bad.
Okay. So you think it's just about colonialism is bad?
Not like okay. That's.
Well, you just said that. So because
well, like I think
that's
it's like
the reason why I say it like that is because I've been saying over and over again. Ray, like Renoir, is like they don't believe in black and white characters. So
I just like
they can make a movie about colonialism, but then is it just
don't
about
really.
that?
I don't really know much about like the history or anything, but like, definitely about like maybe like how like the kind of ruling class, like how maybe like how like the ruling class kind of allowed it in a way, maybe.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Like to happen.
Yes.
Like they're like I don't know.
Well, first I'll say this movie you don't have to watch. It would help if you knew some history, especially like the kind of the idea of at least a little bit about the Muslim, the Mughal fall in India and kind of the rise of the British Empire around the same time in the 19th century. But you don't really need to know that much stuff. Like even when Ray even talked about always making the movie. That's partly why we get this like kind of interesting prologue and stuff.
It's like a video essay.
I love it.
With the animations and stuff. Is like he even said like he was making this for an audience even in India that he understood a lot of people didn't know the history and stuff. But even if that prologue's not there, a lot of it is like what you just said. Like a lot of it can be context independent too. Like this idea of a ruling class letting this happen, you know, and it's kind of like a comedy too. Like how you understand. I mean, it's not kind of. It's definitely a comedy, but like kind of just like making the relation that way. But yeah, I just want to say that like I don't think the history's like it's very interesting too because it's a very historical movie, but I don't think it's necessary actually to enjoy the movie really that much. No. Especially because like you said, like you're like you weren't sure as you were saying it, but it's definitely like you're spot on. Like basically this ruling class letting it happen. You know, almost as that's another reason why I picked it with the music room. You know, how like that kind of ruling elite class just like let stuff happen to them. You know, this kind of fall they had. But I don't know, is there anything else that stands out to you about the movie? Or
We're playing chess.
Okay.
The colors.
The colors, yes.
Colors
I wish
cool.
this would get restored too. You know, it's decent.
David Attenborough's brother's in it.
That's brother?
Yeah, it's Richard Attenborough.
The main guy?
The
Richard
main British guy.
Which British one? Guy. The younger main one or the
the general
one?
The general.
The general. Okay.
He's great. No, I love him.
Yeah, because I saw on the credits. I just saw like Attenborough. I was like, wait, what?
I actually know they were brothers. I just thought that was like a British name.
Richard Attenborough, yeah. Richard Attenborough's the guy who plays it, and he's the older brother of David Attenborough.
The better one. No, the reason why I love Richard Attenborough too, because I've seen, actually, if you look up on YouTube, maybe you can find this video of like him talking about working with Satyajit Ray, and he's like just amazed, like.
I think so. You didn't know he was. Oh, but you like.
No, I knew who Richard. I didn't know he was the brother of David. I just figured that Attenborough was like a common British name or something. Because the time gaps are a lot. Like this movie is 77, and David Attenborough is still doing shit. But,
I mean, he's old though.
He's old.
But he's old in this movie. Like how big a gap are they in brothers? Like
Richard was born in 1923, and he died in 2014.
And so this was 77, so he was like 54.
David Attenborough is 99 years old, bro.
Oh,
Yeah,
damn.
he's
so
old.
okay.
So
That makes
3 years
sense,
difference
yeah.
between the
Because,
two.
Richard Attenborough was like 50s when he was making this movie.
Okay.
So he would probably be in his like,
Damn,
Maybe
David
100 or
Attenborough's old as
something.
fuck. Holy shit.
That's crazy.
90, I didn't know he's like 99 years old, bro. He was born in 1926.
Damn. That's like Clint Eastwood, honestly.
Yeah,
Still
literally.
cooking too.
Even.
Did you see that Clint Eastwood quote? He's like,
Oh yeah.
I'm still getting better. I'm like, I'm not one of those.
Yeah. No, he's like Clint Eastwood's like 95 though.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Like
They were both
David
born in the 20s.
David Attenborough was 13 when World War II started.
So yeah, he definitely remembers that shit.
Like damn, that's crazy.
That's why you should like nature.
I feel like we're gonna say this and he's gonna like die tomorrow.
Oh my god, don't.
that
That was crazy. That happened in a good way with us, because we were literally the podcast had not come out yet, so it's actually timeline wise gonna be kind of weird. Like, even though the Days and Nights Forest podcast has already come out,
Yeah.
we recorded on a Sunday about this
Yeah.
needs to get restored.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Monday morning the news comes out like the can it's getting
Yeah, it's
premiered
getting
at
restoration.
Cannes. The restoration is getting premiered at Cannes. It already
Yeah.
got restored because it's been getting restored for years, but it was premiering at Cannes like the day after we recorded. And Wes Anderson's like leading the charge.
They heard our call.
Yeah.
They heard-
Wes Anderson knew, and then went back in time and started the restoration, and then came back.
Yep.
It's a tenant type of situation.
See, he's influenced by our podcast. This is just all a temporal pincer. This podcast is a temporal
Okay.
pincer movement.
Okay, to get back to the movie, The Chess Players. I mean, to talk about just movements and stuff, like I think that's another kind of interesting part of the movie too. Is just the aspects of chess, like kind of there's the game that they're playing, the chess game, but then also like basically how Britain is treating India like a chess game itself. Too is kind of like the parallel of the movie.
Even though it's like it's like actual like humans lives
Yes.
they're playing with.
Actually, yes, and I'm glad you said it because there's two quotes I want to mention first. Because you could say like I said, the last movie is about the feudalism, mercantile class kind of dichotomy. This one is the colonial aspect, which is basically Eastern Western. You know, them kind of meeting. And Andrew Robinson, he notes a Tagore quote, who said, I'm going to read the quote, but apparently he said, the interaction between East and West had reminded him of like the battlefields of France he had just seen after World War II, and he said, quote, something of the sense of oppression in a different degree is produced in my mind when I realize the effect of the West upon Eastern life. The West, which, in its relation to us, is all plan and purpose incarnate, without any superfluous humanity. And I kind of love that, like, especially if he's like, basically, the effect of, he's not, I like this quote because he's like saying, he's not saying this is what the West is, but he's saying the West's interaction with the East, in terms of colonialism usually, is this idea of basically it only sees Eastern life as in terms of plan and purpose incarnate, you know, kind of like rationality, and without any superfluous humanity, like you basically just said, and like kind of like a chess game, you know, treats like people the same way, and to kind of give this even a kind of more, because Tagore's honestly, you could say that he's kind of being nice about it, honestly, because Lord Curzon in 1905, I don't know if I'm saying that right. He was the last viceroy in India before India. He was basically the last viceroy in India. I don't know if it was before they got independence, but this was in 1905, so it was way before they got independence. But this will give you the kind of mindset that a lot of the British rulers had in India at the time. He says, quote, his ideal for the Englishman in India was that he should fight for the right, abhor the imperfect or the mean, swerve neither to the right hand nor the left, care nothing for the flattery or applause of or abuse. It is so easy to have any of them in India. Never let his enthusiasm be soured or his courage grow dim, in order to feel that somewhere among these millions he has left a little justice or happiness or prosperity, a sense of manliness or moral dignity, a spring of patriotism, a dawn of intellectual enlightenment, or a stirring of duty, where it did not exist before. That is enough. That is the Englishman's justification in India. And basically you could say like, he's basically saying like all these kind of values that he mentions, you know, manliness, moral dignity, patriotism, intellectual enlightenment, all these kind of things he mentions is like that enough is like our justification for being here, you know, like no matter what, because they don't have it, you know, all this kind of stuff. And you can see that kind of attitude is basically in this movie, you know, like how General Outram or Richard Attenborough, he sees the Indian king, or like kind of, and by extension, like why they need the British to take over, you know. But let me say what Ray says about it too, because he says, quote, "It's a very, very complex mixed kind of thing, the entire British heritage in India. I think many of us owe a great deal to it. I'm thankful for the fact that at least I'm familiar with both cultures, and it gives me a very much stronger footing as a filmmaker. But I'm also aware of all the dirty things that were being done. I really don't know how to feel about it." And honestly, I think there's that kind of I don't know how to feel about it. I kind of love that in filmmaking. Like those are my favorite films, where like a filmmaker's almost like using a film to maybe kind of process how they feel about it, you know? Because I think there's part of that in this movie. It's like just like the music room too, but I think this one's a little more nuanced in terms of. First of all, it shouldn't be surprising, but Ray like was addicted to chess, especially before he started making movies. Apparently, like part of his like the way he got into movies was actually selling all of his like chess books and like his chess set and stuff to make his like first film. But that's another thing. That's another common thing he had with Kubrick, who also was like always playing chess on sets and stuff. I think he even like used to like go make money in like the New York parks when he was younger and stuff. But
well, don't they play chess in 2001?
They do, yeah. And they also play chess in The Killing. It's like they're playing like the Russian guy, the huge macho guy, but I think they're playing chess. I'm pretty sure it's like a chess club or something. They're great movie, but
I don't remember anything about it.
What?
No.
One of his best, tied with like 7 others.
Okay. But how?
S tier, tied with like 7 other ones.
S tier.
So,
I mean, it's a 5-star movie.
It's like A tier.
Okay, but anyway, back to chess players.
We were talking about chess players.
I'm just kidding. But apparently, okay, so the city that this movie takes place in, this is something reading that I kind of was learning more about. Even though I had read about this movie long, I was kind of learning more about it again. So Lucknow, the city this takes place, the Mughal Empire, which was like the kind of Muslim empire that was at least in control of northern India for a long time, they were falling at the time, and they had just lost. And we kind of see with the whole cherries thing that they're eating. They were losing power throughout a lot of these northern kingdoms. Like, we basically see all these different cherries he eats for all different cities. But they had lost power in Delhi, which was the main one. And so after Delhi, the main kind of capital of the Mughal Empire for in this kind of later half of the 1800s was in Lucknow, which was the city we see with this king. And you could say that was partly because they were more willing to work with the British than some of these other kind of Mughal kingdoms, which is also what makes I don't want to get too far into it, but that makes like colonialism interesting too. Is like when you talk about India, you're not talking about India the same way you're talking about a Britain. You know, you're talking about Indian kingdoms that existed, and sometimes you can make them fight each other, and that's why it would be way easier to take over a lot of these places versus like a United Kingdom or something, which is literally united, but or at least more united anyway. More united, at least like politically.
There's a lot of reasons that the British weren't taken over.
Yes.
Also, tiny islands.
It's just the way nations work, like how we understand them now versus like how they were understood back in the day, which is also part of this movie. Which is actually I'm glad I'm saying that, because like the way you could say they understood nations in a different way is the Indian king of culture. You know, of like that's how he valued it, especially when like. The reason I'm bringing up this history is if you're a Lucknow king and you understand a lot of your power, he even says they don't have an army. The British is their army, and they're the ones that are protecting them from the outside. So he's like, if they don't have power politically, where does his like kind of power come from? It's basically culturally, all these things he's interested in, the arts, the music, his religion, that he says he's very devout in. Yeah. But as we see, the British, like, he just doesn't respect those parts, He's like, he just sees him as a guy who's like not paying attention to the job he should be doing. Which even the king admits, like, he might be right about that. Because apparently in this, so the source book that this movie was based on, that Ray had read, was called Lucknow, The Last Phase of an Oriental Culture by Abdul Halim Sharar. And this author, he basically like how we were talking about the Attenboroughs were like living in the 20s. Like he was like a young guy during this fall of these like kingdoms when he wrote. So like, he kind of had like experience actually of the time, and but when he wrote the book, he wrote it more from like a perspective of kind of just being more anti these Muslim kings because of how like he saw them as like more decadent. You know, like apparently they were called like Lucknow was called like the Babylon of the East or like the Paris of the East. You know, these kind of like you know, the city that never sleeps kind of vibes. You know, we even see like shots like in this movie. You know, where they're doing the chicken fighting and like the gambling. Yeah, the ram fighting. Yes, exactly. It's supposed to be more like that kind of city. You know, like a city that was already falling.
Gotham City.
Okay, I mean we don't get crime really. We don't see the crime, I guess. But
it's more like Las
that
Vegas.
kind of I get that kind of vibe.
Like
I
Las
guess.
Vegas.
You're the one that brought up Gotham City this time, so I'm just saying that's crazy.
Got you.
Well, I just knew like
No one's in your head.
I was predicting you might
start a loop
say
ticker
it.
for this.
Damn. We just look at Luke's notes and all he has is the Dark Knight. That's crazy.
I was
the only word
predicting
to
you
know.
were gonna say something.
Nope,
say
no.
Gotham City. I was like trying to get ahead of you. You know, because you just love it so much.
No. But it's funny because they mentioned. I'm going to read this quote about. In a second, but it's interesting. So this author of the source book, it's interesting how he writes about the king apparently in the book, because it's like apparently like a one sentence will be like he's really he really is praising him. The next sentence he's like really hating about like how he ran things and stuff.
Have you read the book?
No, I haven't. No. The reason I mentioned it is like the movie kind of feels that has that same vibe. But so let me read. This is what he wrote. The author, he said, wrote Sharar, quote, appears to be one of the most dubious in all records of history, and yet he's talking about the king, and yet who was also extremely devout, abstinent, and a strict observer of Muslim religious law. Sharar was disgusted by Ali Shah's versification of his love affairs and amorous escapades in his youth with servants, courtesans, and other women. He even had no hesitation in showing shamefully low taste and using obscene language. But he delighted in the king's mastery of classical music, both as a connoisseur and as a composer. I have heard from reliable court singers, wrote Sharar, who were his companions, that even when asleep, the king's big toes used to move rhythmically. Still, he could not avoid condemning Wajid Ali for prostituting his musical talents by adding to an existing style of light, simple, and attractive tunes, which could be appreciated by everyone, several which find their way into race films. So it's kind of funny, like, he's even hating, like, it's like almost like a British, like, kind of like snooty way to hate. Like, he made, like, popular tunes for, like, the common people, too. So, like, he took, like, Indian classical music and made it more popular and shit, which is kind of funny. But, just, like, basically, like, the contradiction of this king in, like, a lot of different ways. Especially for, like, we kind of, like mentioned, or even I did, too, how I still found the music room guy even a little bit sympathetic for, like, his love of music. I think like it's almost like this is like an upgraded version of that.
Yeah.
Of like
he has a love for his people.
Yeah, he has a love for his
culture.
people. But at the same, it's funny because Ray. I'm gonna read this quote too because Ray has said while he was doing research, he almost gave up on the movie for like how much he didn't like the guy. Because like how much he was learning like
It's like, this guy sucks.
Yeah. Because he had talked to that source book. Ray had talked to the translator of that source book. That's also something I should have mentioned in the beginning, that this was the only full-length feature movie Ray made in a different language. This is in Hindi. No, it's actually in Urdu.
What does Ray speak?
Bengali. And he basically always wanted to do movies in his own language, but he loved the story so much and stuff. So he talked to the translator a lot while making this movie. I think they're actually listed as the screenplay writers too. But he's like the translator offered to translate this king also had his own autobiography, and he's but Ray's like he doesn't want to. He's like at a certain point when he started learning all these facts, he's like, I don't want to learn it because the more I learn, like the more I don't want to make this movie. Because he's like at one point in the autobiography, apparently he describes in detail his sex life that started at 8 years old.
Damn.
And Ray's like, I don't, just stop telling me. Because he's like, let me read this quote, because he's like, I think there are two aspects to Wajid Ali Shah's character, one which you could admire and one which you couldn't. At one point I wrote to Shama that I just could not feel any sympathy for the stupid character, and unless I feel some sympathy I cannot make a film. But then finally, after long months of study of the Nawabs, of Lucknow and of everything, I saw the king as an artist, a composer who made some contributions to the form of singing that developed in Lucknow. the fact that he was a great patron of music. That was the one redeeming feature about this king. First of all, that's like basically the same reason he probably made the music room too, which is maybe I don't know if he openly would say that, but also the kind of contact dancing I said we saw in the music room. This is what this king developed a kind of form of dancing too. And Ray also is interested in Indian classical dance to some degree because he has a documentary on the Bharatanatyam dance, which is a different type of Indian classical dance. But yeah, that's a different topic. But to me, outside of the story, I've mentioned the king. So we kind of talked about the chess players, and we've talked about the king. But to me, what makes this movie really special is kind of how this movie interweaves these without ever touching them. Think about it. The narratives never touch. Like they never interact. Like the king never interacts with these two chess players, or like they never have a meeting, or like. Yeah. So basically, the associations you're making have to be in your head, and like, it's definitely one of those movies I can see. Like, I think the first time I watched it, I gave it a 3.5, and like every time I've watched it after that, I've like raised it up. And it's definitely because of that. Like, the more I've watched it, like the images kind of just they basically have to like, I don't know, they kind of make sense in my head more the more I've watched it, you know, because they're not outrightly spoken of like what are we supposed to think of like why he's like kind of showing these two parallel stories, but because Ray also damn, I just had the quote. Yeah, he said, you see, the problem was to interweave the main story with Wajid and the British and the whole business of annexation. Also to establish the idea of obsession, which is basic to the development of the story, with a game which is basically abstract and intellectual. If it had been gambling, there'd be no problem. But the beauty of the story lies in the parallel that Premchand draws between the game and the moves of the crafty Raj leading to the capture of the king. And I think that's like kind of like how he's basically interweaving the two narratives, you know, like just that's why it's called the chess players in the first place. Like maybe these like these kind of intellectual elites that saw themselves as like intellectual in like a game that kind of men that would play chess, but not at the same time basically like, losing their kingdom because of like getting outmaneuvered by a British Empire, you know. But at the same time, this other story of like it's not just pure. They weren't just purely just stupid, you know. Yeah. And
I think one thing that makes them not purely stupid is that they are in the right, and the British know it in this movie. Like they even say it later on in the movie. Like they signed this treaty from 20 years ago. We didn't notify them about this certain thing, so they're completely in the right to stand by that treaty and not sign this new one. But their whole process, and this is like. Why this movie is so great is because he's showing like how British imperialism works or how British colonialism work, because they're trying to do this. They make them sign treaties, be their friends for 20 years, and then they just like stab them in the back essentially, yes. and annex them. Yes. Under the pretense of this treaty that you signed wasn't actually legal because it was under a completely different board of governors or whatever. Yeah. But since they didn't notify this one, they're like, oh, this is going to cause like more like our appearance of how we do this is going to be like altered because now we're looking like actually just colonialists that are just trying to like take over their country. Yeah, because we're not in the right. In the legal sense.
That's why it's like his like kind of justification is kind of interesting. Like the way he kind of is, he's like, we're in the wrong, but we're still in the right. You know, at the end of the day, like because we're doing the right thing. You know. Yeah. That's a very like a colonial kind of mindset. You know, it's like, oh, even with all the wrongs we did, at the end of the day, we're bringing modernization and the right ways of doing things anyway. So it's like, you know, we brought democracy, so we can ignore all the sins and whatever. But let me read what Andrew Robinson says what this movie, which first he calls him a master of the oblique comment, which I kind of love that. So he says, quote, he is a past master, which he says, quote, he's a past master of the oblique comment who likes to keep his audience pleasurably alert rather than resting comfortably in their prejudices and stereotypes. And The Chess Players is one of his most oblique films, delighting in nuance and refined emotion as the culture it depicts once did. So first, there's one director in one movie now that I've watched this time that really reminds me of. where there's like a obsession narrative happening and almost like a background kind of narrative happening too.
Background narrative. Tati.
Buñuel,
Okay.
Obscure Object.
It was like the terrorist shit.
Yeah, with like that one has more just like social. It's not like as singular as like The King in this one, but that one has just like this social unrest background, and then just like this guy obsessed, like this kind of almost like personal obsession with the wife and stuff. This one is more about the obsession of chess and kind of like they're even ignoring their wives, but but this movie also just it's like I don't like it's not like he's still more sympathetic than Buñuel will ever be towards the main character, but it's just most Buñuelian movie in a way in terms of even just these narratives that never even intersect except for like how we're supposed to attach them in our heads, you know. But then hold on. I'm trying. Okay, yeah. Let me read this other quote, Ray quote too. He says, quote, "Easy targets don't interest me very much. The condemnation is there, ultimately, but the process of arriving at it is different. I was portraying two negative forces, feudalism and colonialism. You had to condemn both Wajid and Dalhousie. That was the challenge. I wanted to make this condemnation interesting by bringing in certain plus points of both sides, by investing their representatives with certain human traits. These traits are not invented, but backed by historical evidence. I knew this might result in certain ambivalence of attitude, but I didn't see Shatranj as a story where one would openly take sides and take a stand. I saw it more as a clash, as more of contemplative, though unsparing view of the clash of two cultures, one effete and intellectual, and the other vigorous and malignant. I also took into account the many half-shades that lie in between these two extremes of the spectrum. You have to read this film between the lines." First of all, I like that point where he says like he's like, because that's what makes this movie interesting too, is like he's making a film where usually when you have two sides in a movie, it usually means you have one good side and one bad side. But if you're like going to make a movie with two bad sides, how do you like make it interesting? Where he's like he makes it interesting by kind of giving you justifications for both sides. Like we said, like we don't like really like how the Indian king handles politics or the British side handles like you know, the culture, but at the same time you kind of see like the British guy has certain points about how the Indian king is wrong, you know, about how he doesn't do politics, or like, and vice versa, obviously, about how the British is wrong. So like this idea of like, him bringing plus points, I don't know, just makes the movie kind of interesting, and like especially where you're expecting like, oh, an Indian filmmaker is going to make a film about colonialism, you know, about the British taking over India. All of a sudden you're going to expect something in your head, and like he said, he says what results is that certain ambivalence of attitude, like which is kind of funny. Like you wouldn't expect that for like it's a movie about colonialism from an Indian filmmaker. Yeah. You wouldn't expect ambivalence of attitude, but like that's what makes this movie kind of interesting. Is like he's treating, like I've mentioned, but a lot of race movies in the past, like more like a documentarian. You know, yeah. He's trying to show like he mentioned the music room about kind of like a dinosaur's dying, like almost like this is like how it got taken over. You know, like but I don't know. Yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started. I haven't mentioned much of her this week, Devapriya Sanyal, but she mentions how Ray is like Ray's tone is that of gentle irony, which I also think is interesting too, because it's like I think Buñuel is also very ironic, but I think like that gentle is like doing a lot of like difference between Ray and Buñuel, because Buñuel I would say is very gentle usually. Yeah. But Ray is also like, you know, he's very gentle and like he's more kind of nuanced when he's being ironic.
Buñuel's as gentle as a bucket of water to the face.
Okay. I know the reference you're making.
I mean, it can be gentle.
But I mean, like,
that cannot be gentle. What?
If you pour it gently over someone's face, like if you don't splash it,
if you don't dump it on them,
or no, well, if you dump it slowly, it could be like a soothing type thing. We should try it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
On you.
You're
in the water. Anyway, let's carry on.
Yeah. Let me just read this last quote by her, because she says, Ray's tone is that of gentle irony, which many abroad as well as near to home missed. It is not overt denunciation, but if one pays close enough attention, they will be able to see the filmmaker trying to bring out the complexity of a tale that might have been reduced to simple binaries. And yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. It's like that's what I think that's a good way to describe just Ray in general too. Is like he's for basically looking for complexities inside of a tale instead of just simple binaries, just in general in all of his movies. I think that makes this movie even more interesting because it's a movie about chess players.
Why did it say watch the chess players?
It's a long story. I can't explain it.
No, we're just gonna ignore that.
Yeah, no, I can't explain it. It'll take too long. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get into the movie. Why is that funny though?
It's just all caps. Watch the chess players at the top of your notes.
Well, I put in all caps my notes if I'm doing a movie for the podcast.
Just like,
and then I'll just put in regular letters. But
it's just funny. That's the beginning of your notes.
But I love these. I love these opening shots too, of just these close-ups of the chessboard. These huge rings these guys are wearing too. That's their,
this is a crazy chessboard.
The black background too.
Yeah, black background. Like, also similarity with both these movies, black backgrounds. To open the movies. And then these guys just kind of, smoking their hookah too. That's another important part of this movie is the hookah always in the background.
So relaxing.
It just makes the movie more relaxing. But yeah.
Well, it gives it the. They say a few times in this movie, like they bring up how fast the life of the British are compared to their culture there, and this is probably one of the reasons. I mean, sitting back enjoying hookah in a chess session, man.
No, there's
what could be better.
Yeah. Like
chess is fun. I like chess.
I'm just so bad at it.
You can only get better by playing.
See, that's the problem.
But there's another thing with both these movies. Is like I just feel I don't know if Ray. I think there is part of it that he's saying this where like you can kind of replace just art in general. Like if you get obsessed with anything, of course, if you're a film head, you're kind of obsessed with film. And he's always kind of making that for that kind of audience in a way. But that idea of just like being obsessed with something and kind of ignore everything else, that's going on in the world, like, and being obsessed with that as an excuse, because it's like we especially see this with these two main characters. Like, it seems like they're doing that in a certain way because they maybe know deep down they are losing everything.
They're
like,
burying their head in the sand.
Yeah, that kind of yes, exactly. Sure. But even they don't want to admit it. It's like a subconscious thing.
It's definitely subconscious. It's hilarious whenever that old guy comes in and tells them about the bad news, because every time the guy says the bad news, that one dude just says, "Oh my god." I just find that so funny. But then this is where we get this narrator too, where he's like, Mr. Mir and Mr. Mears are only playing at warfare, like basically kind of making fun of them. Because one of them says checkmate, and then he's like, it has been like this since these noble friends discovered the game. And he's like talking about like, who has ever heard of the landed gentry working? Basically kind of making fun of them of like, this is all they do, they're not actually really going to do anything. Which is like, even they kind of make fun of themselves later on in the movie about that too. But yeah, then we get the narrator is telling us about how he actually is describing kind of what I described earlier about how when the Mughals fell in India and Delhi, Lucknow became the kind of central capital for Muslim culture. And he's like, then he says the culture had its cruel sides too, and we see the chicken fights and the kind of the gambling and stuff. So we're supposed to see like the negative side of Lucknow. But then we get introduced to the king first, and it says he had other interests too. And it shows him like I love this shot too, where he's like dancing with the women, like there's like women dancing all around him as he's like smoking hookah. The narrator tells us he didn't like. Says something like the king didn't like much of raining, like basically actually doing his job. But he was proud. He was proud of like his crown, and like when he says that, he's like proud of his like literally actual crown. Because he's like he was so proud of it that they sent it to Britain.
To Britain, yeah. To admire it, and that's when we get introduced to Lord Dalhousie, the guy who basically said, apparently this is like a real quote too, because like it's a good interweaving of like you think it's like a story, but it's like actually real documents where he's like the king sent his crown to the England, and Lord Dalhassie's response was, he should have sent his head in it instead. And then he says like he'll be a cherry that drops in her mouth one day too, and that's when we get the narrator telling us Dalhousie was fond of cherries, and like this animation of like the cherries of different cities like kind of being popped in their mouth and stuff. But then we get introduced. First, we get that's the king introduction. Then we get introduced to the kind of the opposing side. The Richard Attenborough as General Outram. And honestly, this might be my favorite kind of conversation in the movie between them. Is this first one? Because this is where he's asking them as questions, but he basically knows the answers already. Because he's like, first he's like, have you heard of a pigeon with one black wing and one white wing before? And he's like, no. He's like, apparently this guy just won a prize for producing a black wing and a pigeon like that. And he's like, I just learned about that because I'm reading through the hour-by-hour account of the king's day, and that's what he did. He's like, oh, did you know the king prays 5 times a day? And he's like, yeah, that's what they do in Muslim culture. And he's like, oh, but I didn't know they actually do that, huh? And he's like, yeah, some people actually do. And then he's like,
he's a very devout man.
Yeah, he's like, he flew kites on the roof. He took a nap, had his third prayer. Basically describing like all his stuff, but like none of it's like politically related. You know, he's like and then in between all this, he somehow has time for his 400 wives or whatever. Yeah. He was like, "Is that real?" Well, first he's like, I've heard he's also kind of a poet too.
Yes.
Is he any? And I love this question. He's like, is he any good, or is it simply because he's the king that they say he's good? And he's like, I think he's rather good, sir. I love this assistant guy too, because he's kind of more like you can tell he actually kind of likes the king. And this is like a great. He quotes this poem by the king. He says, "Wound not my bleeding body, throw flowers gently on my grave. Though mingled with the earth, I rose up to the skies. People mistook my rising dust for the heavens." And like it's like he says it, and then the guy's like, "Oh, what is that supposed to mean?" Basically, like doesn't take it seriously.
He's like, is that it?
Yeah, he's like, is that it?
He's like, I like the brevity.
yeah. But then he asks him about his songs too. Kind of like this is what's I like about this movie. Like the general's kind of asking these questions negatively, but it's also making you kind of impressed with the kings too. It's like, oh, this guy like he writes poetry, like he's like really religious, devoutly religious. He writes songs too. Because he's like, what about his songs? He's like, and the other guy's like, he's really quite gifted, sir. And he's like, oh, he's fond of dancing too? And he's like, yeah, he's fond of, he's like, yeah, that's what I said earlier. He's like an expert in like dancing or something as well. And that's when he's like, does he really have 400 concubines, 29 muta wives? And he's like, what the hell are muta wives? And he's like, temporary wives, sir. They can be either for 3 days, 3 months, 3 years.
It's like, so muta means temporary?
He's like, no, sir, it means enjoyment. And they both just like pause for something. But then he's like, what kind of king do you think he is after all this? And he's like, I think he's a special kind of king, sir. And he's like, special? I would have used a stronger word. But I would have used a bad king.
A bad king.
Frivolous, effeminate, irresponsible, worthless. He's like, and then other guy's like, well, we've had eccentric. He's not the first eccentric king. He's like, he should be the last though. And that's basically his whole point. He's like, okay, now the British like should be taking over, you know. And that's when he tells him his plan to take over. But then we get.
And he does say, like even the assistant. Even after saying all the things about like the good things he would say about the king, he does say also. He's like, whenever asked, he's like, "Is he fit to rule?" He's like, "No, I don't think he should rule." And he's like, "Okay, good, because if you didn't say that, you wouldn't get promoted." Basically.
Yes. So I can't tell if he's like actually serious about that as well.
Yeah.
But
because that's another big thing about colonialism. Obviously, is they send in these guys first to make friends with them, learn get accustomed with the language and the actual culture, and a lot of times those are the people who actually go native, as you would say, as they would say. But.
Yes, no, that is true. That's a good point. Yeah, because it's like he's the one that actually knows the language and stuff. So there is kind of just like, of course, the more he learned about it, he likes it more, and in general, actually doesn't really want to learn anything about it. Which is actually a very that's a thing with a lot of Britain and India, was like they saw themselves as a separate like group for the most part their whole time in India. like they did not want to like basically intermingle for the most part. They kind of saw themselves as a separate culture. Like, because you kind of see, like, there were some areas where the French also had colonies and stuff, but their colonies were much more, like, integratory, I guess you could say, versus, like, the British, which were very more, like, you know, like, master-slave kind of relationship, I guess you could say, but yeah. But I'm not saying the French were good or anything like that, but I'm just saying it's the British kind of had their own levels of that. But now we've been introduced to the two sides. Now we're going to see the chess players kind of for the first time actually talking and stuff. And of course, the first time we see them, they're arguing. Like how Mr. Mir is like he apparently always touches pieces without moving them and stuff. And they're like, oh, that's actually a rule and stuff. And then we see
it's like new rule.
Yeah, and then we see this other older guy come in. He actually knows what's kind of going on in the outside world.
This is the guy that like comes in, says like electronic services are good, but they're also terrible because they bring bad news faster.
Yes. Which I was thinking, is there like
There is another movie that we have that did
there's
that.
a fucking movie that I can't.
John Woo?
Wait,
John Ford?
Say it again?
John Ford.
Or Tati. It's a Tati movie.
Yes, it is it's the Postman. It's the Post
The
movie,
Postman?
right? Isn't it the
For what?
Post movie? It was the quote where the guy says,
Yes.
electronic services like the wire services are great, but they're also terrible because bad news arrives faster.
Oh, Jour de Fille.
It's Jordan
Jordan.
Yeah, when he's like the postman. Yeah.
Isn't that one? I'm pretty sure it is.
No, because he's like trained to be like a better postman. Yeah.
But there might be another movie though that we did
Well,
where bad news arrives quicker. Or
Yeah, it's in
good.
Jordan Fee where she says,
Yeah.
I wanted to be fast, but the
Yeah,
Americans
there
get all
you
the glory. And then he says that, and she's like, oh, the Americans can do as they please.
But there is a short film called he has a short film called like The Postman.
Yeah.
That's the one that he made. Like he expanded that short film.
Yeah.
Into Jour de Fille.
It is. Yeah. It is that quote.
There's also a clip from Jour de Fille in Evening Classes, his short film. Which I don't know if maybe that's where you're confusing it.
No, it was definitely the
this
quote.
one. You didn't let me finish the quote.
It's the quote the day it was released.
No, I'm saying like he's saying another movie though too.
No, it's this one.
No, it was definitely this one.
Okay,
It was definitely.
I know.
Let me finish the quote.
Yeah.
I wanted to be fast,
No,
but
I
the
agree with
Americans
you.
get all the glory. And she was like, oh, the Americans can do as they please, but they can't make the crops grow any faster. Besides, news is really good, so let it take its sweet time. Because I was literally thinking of that while I watched it. I was like, what movie did we do that had the same... Because I was thinking John Ford for a second, but I was like... Okay.
I can't remember what movie it was.
There might be a different one that has a similar kind of theme too. I'll kind of after that, but I like that. Because actually both of those are about kind of... that one's about Americans bringing in modernization. This one's about the Britain, but like... same vibes. Same vibes. Yeah, America was basically... this is like 19th century... America's 20th century Britain, basically. But
21st century America.
No, 20th.
Who knows?
Oh, and maybe 21st. That'll be China.
Still ongoing.
Okay.
No, we're only 1/4 of the way.
We are.
But yeah, then this is where they're like this other guy that's come is telling them how they're like It's funny that like they don't even know that chess was invented in India, which is so funny. And they've been playing it this whole time.
He was like, wait, this wasn't invented Iran?
They're like
Or
shocked.
Iraq?
Yeah, they thought it was invented in Persia or something. But then they're shocked to learn that the British have their own way, and he's teaching them the British rules.
The pawn can move 2 spaces.
Yeah,
this is instead of the prime minister, it's the queen or whatever.
And again, when the pawn reaches the other side, it turns into a queen to make the game faster. Like, oh, the British are. I must say, the British are clever. You know, and like, oh, they find our game too slow, huh?
They find our way of life too slow.
Yeah.
And this was also one of the first instances in the movie where this fucking like I don't know which one it is. It's the how would you describe them? I guess I don't know because they both kind of look the same. They're like maybe the skinnier friend. I don't know. The one that's maybe the more eccentric friend. I guess I don't know the funnier one.
That's Mir.
Yeah. Like, he just says, like, every time this guy says something about the news outside, this dude just goes like, oh my god. Like, it's such a funny way. But he does that, like, all the time in this movie. It's so funny.
There's, like, kind of just, like, they hear it, but they just, like, kind of ignore it after the... Yeah, because they're like, I hear the East Indian Company plans to take over Oud, which is where they live. There's also just multiple examples of, like... Because this time they're like, hey, show him the sword from your... from your great grandfather. It's just like thinking of like how their great grandfathers were soldiers and stuff, and how that like comparing them to them who just like play chess all day. It's just like kind of funny. Ray's like making the joke like kind of openly, but then Mir says, you said the funny one. He's like, whatever happens, the British can't stop us from playing chess. Like that's all they care about. After this guy's like telling them like they might take over and stuff.
They can't stop us from playing chess.
But then the other guy says, we may have invented the game, but it's the British that have taken it up, which is kind of just like an interesting like thing. Like India invented the game of chess, but then Britain popularized it and brought it back to India too, and that's kind of why they're playing it. Like it's funny, like colonialism is like this kind of has already happened. Like brought them a game that it wasn't originally invented there, and they didn't even know it, which is funny.
Just levels this shit.
Yeah. But then the narrator says another game was being played elsewhere between Dalhousie and General Outram, and he talks about how like their plan of taking over Lucknow.
Crazy sunset shot.
Yes, sunset shot. It tells us. It just made me think of the time because it says the distance between Calcutta and Lucknow was 7 days, 600 miles, which just crazy. Like having to like just travel 7 days, anywhere is just crazy. But then we see this one we cut to this movie's not like we see basically both wives' houses before we go to they go to their location. But first we see the first wife. It'll cut to her sitting alone. She's like all alone in like the dark as they play chess at Mirza's house. And the servant comes and tells him, "Oh, she wishes to see you, sir. She has a headache." She's clearly making it up, but he's like, "Okay, fine, I'll go see her." That's actually before he goes to see her though. He says they don't say a word when you spend the night with a whore, but when you stay at home and play a game, they pester you. Like, crazy. Yeah, which is a crazy line. Because then that's when he goes to his wife's room to check on her. And he's like basically having to defend chess to her because he's like, "I left that game because you called." And he's like, "Oh, that stupid game." He's like, "Stupid game. Why is it why it's the king of games? It was invented in India." Now he's like bragging about it. He's like, "It was invented in India. And now the world plays it." He's like, "Oh, then the world is stupid." And he's like, "Ever since I started playing chess, my power of thinking has grown 100-fold." And she's like, "Oh, but you never think of me." It's like, damn, she's coming back with
she's
the meter. Which is funny. I think Ray's also like this. There's another kind of whole background thing going on of like both these guys like having no idea what's going on with their wives too.
Yeah, so
while they think they're really smart. Whereas like this guy's like saying his power of thinking is like going 100-fold, but he like has no idea what's going on with his wife. And then it's basically implied here where like she kind of seduces him, and it's basically implied, but not directly, but he basically can't get an erection. Like,
oh, definitely.
Yeah, because like it cuts
I don't
back.
think it's that. I don't. It's not implied. She like say something like that. Like
she says something like that.
She says like, "You don't love me."
Yeah. And he's like, "Oh no, it's not that." It's just like that's what makes it funny because like so it's like she comes on top of him and he's like, "Oh, okay, that's why he's gonna have to stay longer." Cuts to the outside with the servant like smiling because she's like, "Oh, okay, I know what's going on." Then it cuts back into inside the room and she's like, "Oh, you don't love me." Because he's like, "Don't be angry. The thing is," and she's like, "Oh, you don't love me." And he's like, "I'll prove it tomorrow. It's today. My mind was elsewhere with Mir."
I was thinking of my bro, man.
Yeah, he's like, I was thinking of my friend. Yeah.
He took us out of the game.
Which is crazy. But that's when he goes. He leaves her to goes back outside. But then we see a quick scene of General Outram or Richard Attenborough meeting with the Prime Minister, which is kind of the assistant to the king, and basically saying like the king's going to have to be forced to sign this new treaty. And I kind of love this because like we learned this Prime Minister gets this information, and then actually it'll come back to him in a second. But yeah, he gets this information that basically the king's going to have to give up his power. But then it cuts to back to the chess players, and now Mir's the house they're at. They've lost all their chess pieces that day, and they don't know where they've gone. And the shops are closed, so they have to go to basically they remember that their old lawyer friend has a chessboard they can use and chess pieces. So they're like, okay, which is it's just like a great, just kind of sidetrack thing that happens.
This is an amazing scene.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, the entire day is ruined before like.
This kind of feels like a silent comedy scene.
No,
like,
it is. There's this great shots of him just like pacing back and forth. That he's like, okay, how are we gonna find the like basically this. The only reason they're willing to think is like to find more ways to play chess, basically. And then he remembers
like, what can I not do to spend time with my wife?
Yeah. Then he remembers his old lawyer's house, so they go to the old lawyer. And this is when they're like sitting, they're like in the waiting room waiting.
It's one of the best scenes in the movie.
He's like, is your father in? That's when the son comes in. He's like, oh, is your father in? And he's like, yeah, he's resting.
They go and sit down at the chess table already. Also, by the way, you have to say that.
They're trying to be casual about it. Too.
They're trying to be casual. Because all they want to ask about the chessboard, but he's like, oh, he's resting, you know. He's in bed.
He's unconscious.
No, but the way he's pausing it, though, he's like, he's resting. And they're like, oh, he's like, he's in bed. And they're like, oh, and he's like, unconscious. And they're like, oh. And they're like, oh, we've sent for the doctor. And they're like, oh, shit. And then the guy's like, let me go check on him. And they go sit down. And that's when...
right at the chess set, man. Oh,
right at the
so
chess,
good.
and they're sitting down at the chess set. They start playing the game, like, kind of sneakily.
So slowly.
They try to sneakily play. And then the servant comes with, like, 2 drinks for them. Moves the chessboard out of the way so he can put the 2 drinks on the table for them. But they don't want to say anything. And so then they start getting up and playing the chess one by one at the different table that the guy puts the chessboard on. But then, like, right when they started the game, the son comes and he's like, oh, the father's woken up.
Like, it's so good.
It's like, it's funny, like, making this father, like, wake up as, like, a negative news now.
It's just like it's such a silent comedy gag, mostly just because like it's all gestures because they're being completely silent this whole time. Like
really is.
It's so good because this guy, he plays it whenever they're standing up. He literally does it to like flourish with his hand, going like your turn, and then whenever the other guy gets there, the guy comes in and goes like, oh, my dad's awake. He's like, fuck.
And then they have to go talk to this guy now. But then, like, right when they try to talk to him, so this is like, this is basically a silent comedy because
he's just
right
like,
when they try to talk to him, you're like, oh, you know what's happening. This guy's about to die. And then, like, when they run out too, this is the only thing that can't be a silent comedy because they run out of the room and they hear the cry. That's when you know the guy's actually died because they hear the crying of the family right when they leave the room.
They're like, fuck this shit.
Oh my god. At least they don't take the chessboard. They leave.
I was kind of hoping they would, honestly.
But honestly, their solution is great too. But we'll see that in a second.
Yes.
Because that's when it cuts to. This is where like we're also getting these contrasts of emotions too. Because it's like we just learned that the king is gonna have to give up his empire via the assistant, who's gonna have to come tell the king now. Then we get this like comedic scene. Then it cuts back to this kind of like almost like a music room dance performance of like, okay, now we're kind of appreciating the king's kind of culture, like why he does what he does. Where he's like watching this dance performance take place. It's a pretty. It's like it takes for 3 or 4 minutes too. And it's great. Honestly, my favorite part of the scene too is not the dance is great, but it's like at the end of the dance, all of a sudden it becomes really silent, and everyone just leaves the room really silently. It's like kind of insane. Like the king's just sitting there, all of them is like bow and stuff, and they all just leave completely silent. And then that's when his prime minister comes and tells him the news of like he's like crying while he tells him, he's like, you're basically gonna have to give up your kingdom. Actually, before he can even say it, he's crying, and the king has one of my favorite lines. He's like, just say it, man, nothing but poetry and music should bring tears to a man's eyes, which is kind of amazing thing for a king to say. But then that's when he's like, you shall no longer wear the crown. And yeah, like it's funny because it cuts to him like saying this bad news, and it cuts to a quick cut of basically kind of the evils of Lucknow, you could say, of the goat fighting, the gambling, and this is when we're seeing Mir as like, you could say like this is where he's kind of making the relation of, oh, these are like one of the kind of elites that allowed this to happen, you know, where they're like kind of betting on it too. We're watching these kind of goat fights take place. Damn, they would have loved DraftKings though.
They would have, man. This shit's insane though.
Yeah, go to betting on goats. No, but then that's when they're kind of just like chilling outside, like not knowing what to do, like they're like really bored. There's this great close-up shot of Mirza who draws like a chessboard on in the sand because he like has nothing to do. That's all he can think about. Mir says, "What a glorious day! Yeah, we have to spend it in idleness." But then Mirza gets like a hope. He gets some inspiration. He's like, okay, there's a solution to every problem. And it cuts to them at their house. Zoom it like it's kind of similar to the opening shot, but this time instead of like the chess pieces, they're using
household.
Yeah, the household items,
basically,
like
fruit,
fruit. A real sense of invention here. But yeah, then that's when the wife like also hears them. As she's in her room, she's like kind of satisfied of taking their pieces away from them, but then she hears like they're still playing, and that's when she like.
Oh, I like how she hears it
out.
Because I'm pretty sure she hears it whenever the guy is saying like, no, the tomato isn't the knight, the lemon's the knight, or something like that. Like he was complaining about because the guy was forgetting what they were.
Yeah. And that's when the servant tells him, the wife, who knows what magic is in that game. Which I kind of like that line, but and that's when the wife comes, throws the pieces, and they're like, "Okay, we gotta go play at let's go play at your house instead." Yeah. Honestly, for a movie with under 2 hours, it has intermission, which is surprising.
Yeah, that's strange.
I think more movies had intermissions back then, though.
More movies
like
should
in
have
India?
intermissions too.
Like in
in India, a lot of them do. Just but a lot of them are longer too. So a lot of them are.
Because I was like, I don't really ever see them that much.
For
like
people used to smoke,
yeah.
Smoke breaks.
Yeah. But then the king, the intermission comes back with the king talking to basically the leaders who, basically he's like saying that deceived him and like basically let this happen along with him. He talks about the Colonel Sleeman report that General Outman had mentioned earlier about like kind of hating on the kingdom. Like he's like basically kind of agreeing with a lot of the points he had made too.
He's agreeing with them, but then also I'm pretty sure he's saying like if they were as bad as he was saying, why are the people not saying anything? Why is it only the British saying this? Like,
his mom makes that same point later on.
Yeah, because he was like, the people can easily leave this land and go to a British-controlled land if they wanted to, and they don't. So.
But then he says like, it's my fault. I should have never sat on the throne. But I love the robes, the jewels, the palms of glitter, and there's a great shot of his hand like going down the throne too in close up as he's like saying that. And then he's like describing, he's like basically describing all the reasons that he loved the kingdom too, like all the kind of decadence he had. There's like this part where he's like, he like set up this part where he's like, pretty girls and pretty uniforms on pretty horses. What a picture they made as they trotted by. He's like thinking about it and stuff. And then he like has that song. He sings them a song too. He asks them like, do they remember that song that he used to sing, and he sings it for them and stuff. Just like I don't know. It's a very different, a great moment of him, kind of like you said, it's contradictory. Like he is blaming them, but then he's also blaming them. Like he doesn't want to blame the British kingdom, but he also does at the same time. And then like he's also taking blame himself. But then he asks this great question too. He's like, how many kings of England have written songs? Ask the residents if the Queen of Victoria has composed songs that the residents sing, which I think is a great line too, of like the kind of different way, like the kind of, he's pointing out how the kings relate to the subjects in India versus maybe in Britain or something.
It's also just different ways of ruling.
Different ways of ruling too. Yeah. But then he kind of says this thing at the end. He kind of ends it like, if they want it, they'll have to fight for it, which is, I think is kind of funny, like, because maybe if you're watching it the first time, you're like, oh, maybe he is going to kind of stand up and fight. But now knowing watching the movie, it's like he's making like it's almost like it's a setup like for like in a typical movie you might get the, okay, now the king's going to fight back. But it's like almost like a more like make it more of a comedy, like, oh, he's actually not going to fight back at all. You know, it's like literally there's going to be no bloodshed. But you could say like maybe him being smart.
It's a
too.
moral victory, I think. I think it's the moral. I think that's what the ending is. It's more like moral victory type.
No, because he already knows that he's lost, basically. Yeah. So at least he's not gonna like.
Well, because his ego's
not gonna get in the way.
Like, what's the line? He gives over his crown. He's like, you can have my crown, but you'll never have my signature. So he's like, you can take it, but I'm not gonna like agree to it. Essentially, like, I mean, I guess he did. I don't really know what that means, but it's a good line though.
Yeah. No, this is when we get General Outram scene with the assistant, where he's telling him that what we talked about earlier, how like he's like, we even have less justification here than we did in Sing. Because he's like, the king would be entirely justified to keep validity of the earlier treaty because we never told them about the newer treaty or whatever and stuff.
It was like something so specific. It was something about like it was done under a specific board of governors, and they didn't notify him about that. And so now in their laws, they're liable for that because they didn't tell him.
No, but like, but then like this is classic colonialism. Is like they're not going to treat the subjects the same way they would treat their own because it's like they're technically breaking the law, even with the treaty, but like, they're bringing good stuff to their subjects anyway, so they're kind of able to ignore it. And like the Queen Mother says something later on about how she couldn't even understand this treaty in the first place. Yeah. Like everything, like basically they're making them sign treaties they can't understand, and then breaking them anyway. So it's like, what's even the point of the treaty? Yeah, a lot of this is for show anyway. Yeah, because he's like, for all intents and purposes, we're already standing on British land, basically. Like, there's nothing really we can do. Like, so we're kind of just making up whatever. We're gonna have to do this anyway.
He says, how was the term? Facti addendum or something? How I can't remember.
Fait accompli.
Fait accompli. That's what it was. Yeah.
No, I was like, I remember that because I was trying to spell. I was like, I cannot spell.
Yeah. Fait accompli.
I don't even know if I'm saying that right.
Because that basically means exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Like something that's
already happened.
It's already happened.
Yeah. And then he has this like long lines like, does who knows what he's going to do? Does he even know? Does anyone ever know? Does he even know himself? He's certainly the biggest bundle of contradictions I've ever come across. And then he's like, because I love he's kind of like got a general's attitude too, because he's like, he's already regretting like having to see this king for the kind of takeover too, because he's like, can you think of anything more preposterous than the royal embrace? Because I remember this line too later on when we see him actually embrace him later, you can see like kind of the disgust he has on his face.
Yeah.
Like, receiving that. Because he like talks about the Atta fragrance, which is an extract of a certain type of rose. Because he's like, oh, that fragrance he has, it smells terrible. And then the assistant like pulls out it's like a handkerchief with the fragrance on it, and he's like, oh, I love that. He's like, a lot of people around here always wear it, and he's like, oh, it smells terrible. I can't get out of it from last time I smelled it. And it just like to me, like, I kind of love like little moments like that too, because it's like there are like I see this a lot. I think about this a lot too, where like a lot of Western arguments will be like very rational, like, oh, we're bringing democracy or blah blah blah, but really a lot of it's just like personal, like they don't like certain way they do other things in different countries, which are more personal but they'll try to make everything more rational. But at the end of the day, like it'll be like something like, oh, you don't like these certain types of smells, that are popular in a different culture or something. So now that's why it's worse or something. But then it cuts to, now we've first seen Mirza's wife, now we're going to see Mir's wife, which is honestly, this might be the funnier one.
This is way funnier.
This is where she's like, we get the scene of her surprises here. He's at home. Then it cuts to them like playing chess at his house now. Mirza's like, wives are always problems, don't you agree? Because he's already heard apparently about these rumors. But then Mr. Mir says, some wives are problems though, not mine though. We have no problems here. And then it literally cuts right after he says that to the nephew in her room with her. And he's like, oh, don't worry, when a man plays chess, he's lost the world. And she's like, oh, that's exactly what he says too.
That's exactly what he says.
And so like they're literally like in the bed together. He's just like fucking around. I guess he's like popping all his fingers for her or something. It's like
it's the Riz of this time in India.
Okay, that always works. If you could pop, he pops his thumb or something. Some crazy shit. It was working on me. I was like,
that's one of the craziest things you ever said.
No, I'm kidding.
No, I'm paused.
Honestly, he was taller though than this other guy. I was like, okay, I can see why you picked him over.
Bro, you're salivating. Like, oh, he's tall.
Even though he's like fucking clueless face. Too.
It's like, so
good. Like there's these multiple intercuts of like he's like, oh, you won't. This is like another kind of silent comedy. He's like, oh, you won't find. You can almost see like little title cards. He's like, oh, you won't find a wife like mine. And then it cuts to her like with a different guy in her bed and stuff. But then he like hears.
He's just like, my life. What my life loves chess.
yeah. I forget why he decides to go to the room too. I think he hears something or. I forgot to write it down. But he decides to go to the room, and that's when she's like, "Oh, hurry, he's coming." And the nephew can't even get under the bed completely before he gets in the room. And they make up the worst excuse of they say because they heard the war is gonna start soon, the army's recruiting, so he's trying to hide.
Oh, the army came to his house and he ran out.
Calligraphy.
Oh, his wife's calligraphy, or the calligraphy he did for his wife or something. I forgot what he said. Yeah,
he's all fetched that calligraphy.
Yeah. The shot of this man though, just halfway under the bed, his face, his eyes are massive, and he's just not saying anything. It's just so,
especially when he's not, he can't think of anything for apparently what he's actually hiding from, because she has to make it up for him.
He's like, "How'd you hear about this?"
And then he's like, "Oh, but okay, you're already hiding inside. Why'd you have to hide under the bed?" He's like, he just panicked, feel his heart, and there's a little moment where he puts his hand, she moves his hand on his chest, and she's like, "Oh, it's the other side." It's the other side of his heart. But then Mir's so clueless. He's like, "Oh, okay," he just buys it. And he basically just wants to go back to the chess game, so he leaves, goes back to the chess game.
Tells the guy about it.
Yeah.
Because he hears hoofbeats outside, and he starts hiding or something, I think.
No, I think he's cheating too.
Is he cheating?
It's implied that he's cheating too. Because there are little implications that both of them are cheating throughout. Too. But then that's when he's telling him what happened. He's like, "Oh yeah, my nephew's just hiding under the bed because the army is coming to recruit." And he's like, there's a close up of Mirza realizing what was actually happening. And then that's when his he doesn't say it this time. He'll only bring it up later. But there's this shot too where Mir's standing with framed with weapons that his family ancestry had behind him on the wall.
And his friend just starts laughing.
Yeah, he's basically what the information he just learned about his nephew kind of cucking him, and then seeing just kind of relating that to his ancestors versus him now, and it's he's the guy's making a joke for us as the audience too, of kind of basically showing how far they. I guess you can make maybe how far they've fallen maybe.
His ancestors watching him do
that. Yeah. Just maybe imagine him there's no way he could wear this armor. Imagine him trying to find his weapons or something like that. Because he's I'm laughing at my friend, descendant of Burhan ul Mulk's brave cavalry officer. But that's when Mir suggests going to a small mosque that he remembers in a quiet town they can play without distracting wives. And that's when they decide to leave. We get a quick scene of where the general talks to the Queen Mother, and she's kind of just making the point that we made earlier, how they're basically getting fucked. They how is she supposed to recommend a treaty she doesn't even understand?
She also says ask the general who he's serving, basically the company or the queen.
Yeah.
She says that she's gonna go to the queen.
Yeah, she's I'm gonna go I'm going literally to the queen. If you're not gonna do what I want. But then it cuts to a great shot. First, it cuts to the close up of the king and his men. They're all standing around him, and just their faces with this really orangish color on them from the sunset.
Yes.
But he doesn't show the sunset yet. What I love, he first shows their faces just with the light, as he's telling them the news of they're basically gonna have to give it up, or actually they're telling him the news, of the Queen Mother meeting them and stuff, and basically she now wants to go to England and everything. But mainly what I remember from the scene is just the orange from their faces, and then it cuts to the sunset of
such a good shot.
Of the kind of moss and stuff. Yeah, the light of this orange sunset happening, and then it cuts back to him as he sings for them. This is the song Blake mentioned of he sings about this leaving Lucknow and stuff. But that's when he kind of makes the decision to not fight back, where he says, "Dismount all the guns and soldiers and tell them that I'll give myself up." We see then it cuts back to the chess players, these great shots of them also walking away from the town, and with the town in the background, where we learn that Mir basically his memory's way off because there was never a mosque here. They see this kid. He's like, "Hey, is there a mosque around here that used to be here a long time ago?" He's like, "No, there was one that was built a year ago, but it's 2 miles." And he's like, "Okay, you're just wrong." And he says, he's like, "One can't always be right, But then the child invites them to go play at their his house because everyone's already run away from the British that are coming. So they agree to go. And then we get this final meeting between the cuts back to the final meeting between the king and general. And basically the king giving up his crown. The king, I love the general's reaction. He's like, "What am I supposed to do with this?"
Yeah.
Like, it's like, come on, you can't understand what's going on with someone giving up the crown. But
there's something going on with the eyes of all of them. He does a close up of all three of their eyes, the main three players, I guess, because the king, the general, and then the the counselor, I guess you could say. I don't know. Because whenever he's like giving up the crown, right before he just does a zoom in their eyes, like whenever the general's saying stuff, and I don't know.
Because I don't know.
Because it's like that's why it's like it feels like it's still a moral victory, I guess you could say, for the king, because he still has the moral high ground. It seems like he made them understand that. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
It is interesting, like, that the king doesn't actually sign this treaty, because he's like, we need you to sign this treaty for the formalized abdication. He's like, I'll bear my head for you, but not to sign the treaty. So I guess, like, he's saying that's still some dignity, like he's making you do a colonial takeover instead of like a
legal takeover,
illegal kind of takeover, yeah, maybe. Even though it's still like it's essentially the same because there's no violence, but I don't know, maybe that's why.
I just remember the three shots of their eyes, like all three of those guys.
No, especially really the king, I definitely remember, is like really sad this whole time. No, but then it cuts back to the chess players playing, where Mir's basically he's basically more in a good mood now because he's realized he's about to win, and it's kind of implied that he usually loses. He quotes an old verse to him where he's like, "Passion alone will not take you anywhere, neither to the sea, the woods, the land, or the air." And then it's like when Mir's just getting all mad and stuff, and that's when he's like, I forgot why they're bringing up massages or something. Because he's like, I wonder where Akil, which is the nephew's name, he's like, I wonder where Akil places himself while your wife does a massage. And that's when he's like, there's like this reaction of like his face like thinking about that, and he's like, wait a second, like, what are you trying to say? And he's like, that's a dirty trick to pull just because you're losing, trying to get in my head, like, that's not real. And that's when they get this fight. He's like, Mir says, you forget your ancestors were nothing but grass cutters, which is a great line. But that's when Mir pulls out the gun on Mirza. And they have the standoff. Maybe the only time we see like kind of violence from them, they're like actually willing to fight for it. The pride, maybe. But then, as he's pointing the gun, he accidentally shoots it when the British are coming. The kid yells, "The British are coming!" And then he fires the gun accidentally. Which I don't know why Ray's maybe making a point. Like the only time he fires a gun is like on accident. Like not even when he's trying to. But that's when the child has to explain to them that the British have come and they basically gave up without a fight. And then it cuts to the narrator telling us, you're right, Kala, which is the kid's name. The king made sure of that, and on February 1st, 1856, Lucknow fell to the British, and Dalhousie ate his last cherry. And then it cuts to kind of this last scene of the two making up, where Mir says, if we can't even cope with our wives, how can we cope with the British Army? And then he says, my main worry, though, is who to play chess with. And it's kind of a sweet moment, because Mir's just like, here's one person, Mir, and there's food, and we can eat and play at the same time.
It's like, here's one person right in front of
you. And he's like, and then we can eat and play at the same time, and then when it's dark, we can go home. The darkness to hide our faces. And then they come and sit down, and he's like, let's have a fast game. And he's like, a fast game? And he's like, fast, like a railway train. And then it ends with he says, long live the queen, as they hold up a queen. Because you had mentioned earlier they had changed the prime minister to queen.
Yeah.
As a piece. So he's like, oh, long live the queen.
I think my translation is actually a little bit different.
Or long live Queen Victoria, maybe?
Let me find it. I think it's like something like here comes Queen Victoria or something.
Okay, yeah, something like that.
Which it's like
I think
not very.
Right.
It's not
I
very,
write it down. So.
Like a train, a speedy train. Prime Minister, move aside. Queen Victoria is coming.
Yeah.
And the way they say, like the last line, the Queen Victoria is coming. However, it's said in the language they're saying is so good because like it just like echoes for a while and then fades. But
no, I think it freeze frames too.
It does freeze frame.
Another Ray freeze frame.
It freeze frames on it, but then I think the credits still play over something moving, I'm pretty sure. Unless I'm remembering that wrong, but
yeah, that's the chess players, and that is the end of the Satyajit Ray series. Yeah, before we end, as we always do, we tier our favorite.
Rank our favorites, you know.
You can rank if you want, but I would like to see a tier list. If you can. No, you can't. No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You can do whatever. But do you have yours ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, because I still need to get mine ready.
Okay, we'll go slowly for you.
I need to make sure I have all the movies listed too.
There's 11 this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Where should I go?
It's up to you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Number 11, The Hero. Number 10, The Music Room. Number 9, Upper Sansar. Number 8, The Middleman. Number 7, Aparajito. Number 6, Days and Nights in the Forest. Number 5, The Big City. Number 4, The Adversary. Number 3, The Chess Players. Number 2, Pather Panchali. And number 1, Charlotte.
Okay. Damn, Pather Panchali.
Tears? Oh, shit.
It's too hard.
It's too hard.
Okay, come on.
Okay, I'll go next. My ratings are actually they're fairly similar to yours, honestly, Luke, with a few just moved around. But 11 is The Music Room, 10 is The Hero, 9 is Opera Sanzar, 8 is Pather Panchali, 7 is Aparajito, 6 is Days and Nights in the Forest, 5 is The Big City, 4 is The Middleman, 3 is The Chess Players, 2 is The Adversary, and 1 is Charlotta. But I do have a tier list because Dany requested it, so...
Okay.
Tier 1, Charlotta, The Adversary, The Chess Players. Tier 2, The Middleman, The Big City, Days and Nights in the Forest, Aparajito, Pather Panchali. And Tier 3 is our persons are The Hero and The Music Room.
Okay.
Did we give you enough time?
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
You can just be like me in our last series with Katana, where I was just like, oh, fuck it, they're all the same.
No. All right. Tier 1, The Chess Players, and this is all the same.
Favorite Ray movie.
No,
yes.
no.
Number 1. That's number 1.
Wait, no, time out. Tier 1, chronologically.
Oh, no.
Charlotta.
He said The Chess Players first.
Days and Nights in the Forest. This is all the same tier. Charlotta, Days and Nights in the Forest. The Adversary, The Middleman, and The Chess Players.
Okay, so it goes Chess Players,
four of those
Charlotta,
five
The Adversary,
in the 1970s is crazy. Then tier 2 would be Aparajito and Pather Panchali. Tier 3 would be The Music Room, The Big City, and The Hero. And I think the last tier would be Opera Sansar. That's all.
Damn.
But, yep.
Bro hates that popular Ray.
Wait, which one is the popular one?
Opera sounds
like all the
in
ones
the
at the
Big
bottom.
Opera sounds like literally all the
The
ones.
Music Room is actually, yeah, but no, it's only the
I'm
Big
pretty
City,
sure
The Hero. The
Opera
Big City
Sounds
has
I'm pretty
out
sure
all
is
the-
his highest rated movie on Letterboxd.
Oh, really?
I think so, which is crazy.
Damn.
But yeah, that is Satyajit Ray series. I wanted to close with another great quote with him to kind of end. I think it's a good summation is, quote, "If someone were to ask me why I make films, I wouldn't find it easy to answer. Not because they aren't any good and right reasons for making them, but because there are so many. I think the truest answer would be that I make films for the love of it. I enjoy every moment of the filmmaking process. I write my own scenario and my own dialogue, and I find it fascinating to do so." And I think that's what I like the most about Ray is like we've done like even just doing these tier lists, all the different types of movies we talked about on the podcast, and like the different types of stories and kind of situations he deals with is I think that's what makes it interesting is like just him is what kind of connects all of them.
Yes.
And his like kind of style and his approach, it's kind of ironic distance or the gentle irony I talked about. But then also it's kind of like also like sympathies for classical music and just the classical kind of era too as well. while still being a modernist. You know, so
It's just awesome that we had a director that basically documented a lot of what happened, or a lot of the feelings, I guess, of what happened, more so you could say, between, like, in India, or at least in Bengal in 1800s to the 1990s, and how that affected everyone.
Yeah, no. I highly we didn't even touch on his, like, kids movies, his documentaries, his short stories that he wrote, and obviously he composed music too for a lot of his. He just did so much in his career. Just a really inspiring person to me.
Oh yeah, we forgot to mention Abhishek Pong versus the Calls set in
Oh
Sadness.
yes, his top 10 list had the chess players on it, which is honestly that's the first time I ever asked him if I ever see him. Talk about the chess players.
Not even talk about his movies, just like
Oh
immediately.
yeah, I'm
to
like
the chess
why?
players.
Like I'm just. I mean, I can see why, but I'm still like it's crazy that he picked up.
After rewatching, I need to watch more. I need to watch Where the Call again.
Maybe this the two kind of parallel stories.
Yeah,
that don't
that's
really
what I was
connect.
thinking, honestly.
Just the narrative. Like Weird Stuff Called does a lot of interesting things with the narrative too.
Well, and just the laid back nature too, I guess. Honestly.
Yeah. And maybe kind of just that maybe ironic kind of I don't know, the kind of modernization versus tradition too that Weird Stuff Called is also interested in.
Actually, yeah, that's probably
that's a huge one.
That's big.
But now I'd love to hear him talk about that. But yeah, okay. But yeah, that's Satyajit Ray. Next week we're doing top 10 losers.
Favorite losers in
our
cinema.
favorite losers in cinema.
I think.
Does that include idiots?
Yeah, anything you
It's
would consider
very
a
broad.
loser. Anything you would consider a loser.
Because I think we'll talk about this next week. But yeah, our favorite losers in cinema. Until next week, hope to see you floating through the clouds.